It is time for the second quarterfinal match. Are you ready? Then welcome to the stage, Olympus Bolts. Keep that hype going for their opponents, Hex Mambo.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to the desk as we start to kick off quarterfinal number 2. It's Gore. We've got Hurrywind and Mifflin joining me this time around. And of course, I'm really excited for that. But the one thing, maybe I'm not going to say more exciting than this quarterfinal. But if you want to look good while you're watching this quarterfinal, I've got some really good news for you. If you're here in the venue, you can go get your merch from Skulls right now. It's right out in the lobby. You can pick some stuff up, rep your favorite team, whether it's the Bolts, maybe you're rooting for Mambo here. I already saw on the wide cam someone wearing the VVGG hoodie. It feels really good. There's a baseball jersey in here as well. Absolutely blown away by all of that. Of course, if you're watching at home, we still have a lot of new merch that's going to be hitting the store to celebrate the SMITE World Championship. So you want to make sure you go to shop.highresstudios.com/SPL or shop.smiteproleague.com to pick up your merchandise today. All brought to you by Skulls. So thank you to Skulls for making some of the best merch I think that we've ever had. And I'm excited to see not only everybody rocking their jerseys, rooting for their teams. I've seen quite a few Bolts fans out there that I'm sure are going to be very excited for this one. Everyone I've talked to, though, said they're a little nervous, though. And hurry for good reason, right? The team they're going to be going up against in Hex Mambo, it's not a team to scoff at.
Right. I mean, Hex Mambo is a team that I just personally played against, and I can tell you that they're on fire right now.
I'm going to be honest. I gave that to you. That did not even cross my mind. I'm sorry.
This team, as far as I'm concerned, they're unstoppable. You know what I mean? But I think everyone has a reason to be worried about this team right now. They look good. I've heard they look good in practice, even versus higher-level SBL teams, too. Yeah. So I think you can expect a lot out of these guys. And I think people are a little low on Bolts right now, too. So that kind of meshes together to kind of give you a potential for an upset.
It's definitely an interesting one. Bolts, Mifflin, are the team that really we kind of want to zoom in on. Actually, those two right there have my mind and my attention, right? Baskin joining in phase 3. You got to question, the literal note I put down was just God's available? Question mark? Like, what is he going to be playing? Who's he going to be rocking? And then LASBRA, who's been this guy who's hard carried and brought this team victories. But Mifflin, sometimes that's not enough. You need the team to be able to step up.
At Worlds, it has to be everybody. It can't just be one individual player having a good performance. And the Olympus Bolts at times have been that team of, if LASBRA looks good, the rest of the team looks pretty good. I want to see all 5 members step up here today. But
same.
I just got to bring up one thing, man. Baskin out of the solo lane up against Deathwalker.
Throwback.
I mean, what year is it? This is going to be a high impact lane. It's a meta that is largely divergent from what we had seen last time these two had played. I imagine we see some pretty high damage output solo laners. The Hadeses of the world probably going to rise to the top. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a match that is very easily decided by the 2 players that you bring up. If jungle and solo are looking good, that's a good day for the Bolts.
Deathwalker. You know, you mentioned the other side. I'm really excited to see what he's going to be able to bring to the table. The one question, and Mifflin, I actually want to throw this towards you because you know, it's just so much to talk about in this matchup, and it feels like not enough time. We're going to make time for it as long as we have it. Jake and Trixtank. That feels to me like it is going to be a place of contention for the Bolts, more specifically.
Honest opinion.
I mean, I tend to agree. Look, Jake has got a propensity at times, not all the time, but at times, to maybe step a little bit out of bounds, to maybe put himself in positions that he doesn't quite have an escape path for. It's hyper aggression from Jake.
Yeah.
At other times, dude looks like one of the smartest, bravest, craziest, most handsome, chillest dudes on the planet. He's walking down a red buff on his own, and I'm thinking to myself on the cast, oh, well, there goes the 408, you know, slash line. It's looking like 048 right now, but instead, he makes those plays happen and creates space in the map. So Definitely a player that I think is a bit streaky. Some days really good, some weeks really good, others not so much. I expect him to have a decent performance because up against his opposition, I mean, Trix could probably say some of the same stuff about him.
Yeah, definitely, I think a matchup I'm keeping my eye on. One you highlighted earlier was Baskin, who is going to be going up against Deathwalker, a solo lane. Years ago, you might have expected, surprising you here in Season 9. We've got Baskin standing by with Kelly on the stage.
Thank you so much, Goremizer. I got Baskin here with me, guys. Baskin, I've been watching you compete for many, many years, but you're relatively new to the Bolts. How has that transition been for you?
It's been pretty smooth, I would say. Obviously, when I was a newer player just coming back, or like returning player, I was pretty bad. And having BaRRA, Ven, people I teamed with before, and Las and Jake, they're just been like really helpful getting me like back in the game, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, you're going up against Mambo. What are your thoughts? How's the team feeling?
Yeah, they're actually, USEC really surprised me. They surprised a lot of people at the last event. Obviously, they have a lot of big names. Deathwalker, it's my first time playing against him in solo. And the last set was kind of surprising because like what people thought was a weaker USEC team put up a good fight against the team that just won the last event. So yeah, I mean, they're definitely, we're not underestimating them. I think we might even be the underdogs here according to like public opinion. But yeah, no, they're definitely an SPL level team for sure.
Well, we definitely don't have too much of an insight of how you guys have been practicing in the last month. It's been over a month since we've seen you guys compete. What have you guys been doing to practice and prepare for this game?
Nothing out of the ordinary. We have gotten really good scrims because being top 4 at the tournament meant we were scrimming the other top 4 teams. So most of our scrims were against Jade and Levi's, which obviously 2 of the best teams in the world. So we've had really good scrims. You know, haven't been winning all of them, but yeah, it's been good practice for sure.
Definitely, Baskin. Thank you so much. Good luck into your game. And guys, give him some noise. And let's head back to the desk.
Honestly, not winning your scrims coming into an event is usually a good sign, right? Like that's the better to be on. If you come in and you say, we've been winning everything, those teams get first rounded almost every single time. So good news for them. They're on the right path. Look, you know, you're talking about a team second in phase 1, second in phase 2, a drop to 6th in phase 3, and qualifying 4th for through the playoffs. So the Bolts have definitely been on an arduous path to get here, but they're here nonetheless. Hurry, the team they're going up against, man. As Baskin said it, depending on who you ask, they might be the underdogs here because Hex Mambo, a team full of a lot of talent. The only person here who had never played in the SPL is going to be Echrome, but he has been popping off. But we talked a little bit about Deathwalker. We can hold off on him for a little bit. It's Dzoni that I want to zoom in on. A lot of people have been hyped for Dzoni on LAN, Hurry, and I'm starting to feel the excitement for it.
Yeah, the guy's got ice in his veins. I can tell you that just from talking to him. There's no emotion change, and that's perfect kind of scenario you're hoping for from one of your teammates when you get onto a stage like this. You want someone who's going to be calm under pressure, and I think you have that in Dzoni. He's also someone who's not afraid to pull out his own unique picks. He kind of brought Hebo back to the table. We saw Twig pick that up earlier as well. So I'm pretty excited to see him sticking to his style. I plan to see some of that Hebo, like we mentioned, maybe some Mercury, some of his signature picks that I think he could really make a name for himself with on the stage today.
And you know, Mifflin, we were talking a lot about the combination of Baskin and LASBRA. I think the combination of Deathwalker and Dzoni is just frightening to think about. And individual plays, Dzoni on ping from Europe got a pentakill against the Kings when he was playing on the Valkyries.
Yep.
Individual plays, Deathwalker gets a 4-man fearless earlier this year and makes maybe one of the best plays we've seen in SMITE history. Put them together, that feels like it's an equation for success.
Yeah, it almost feels like at times that Hex Mambo has been capable of instilling the 2-1-2 meta back, because when I see Dzoni and Deathwalker team up together, the synergy between these players absolutely through the roof. But it's also the trust of knowing, okay, I've rotated over to the solo lane, I put Deathwalker in a good position. A lot of players say, well, that's a good spot on the map to be. I want to hang out there. Dzoni realizes, look, he's 3 levels up now. He doesn't need me anymore. I could spread the wealth elsewhere. And Deathwalker with a 3-level lead, I haven't seen map dominance like we had seen in the previous event in a very long time. Deathwalker bleeds out the enemy jungle. He rotates towards mid, and he'll do it there as well. It's an incredibly scary 2v2, and it's not one that I'd really choose to walk into.
And Hurry, it's actually been an interesting conversation around him specifically, and maybe we'll get to this in a second because we've got Deathwalker standing by. I do want to mention, though, the capabilities this team has shown to turn things around in the middle of a set, go down game 1, pick up games 2, 3, 4 if necessary. So we'll see what ends up happening here. But as mentioned, Deathwalker on the stage now with Kelly. Let's see what he has to say.
Thank you so much, Gormeiser, joining me now, guys. I got Deathwalker on the stage. All right, man, we got to talk about it. You versus Baskin in the solo lane. What are your thoughts?
Well, Baskin has been hyped up as the greatest player of all time in North America. I haven't in Europe, unfortunately, but I have my own playstyle, and I'm very confident that he's about to get absolutely crushed.
All right, you got to tell me a little bit about the suit, though, because you're looking pretty good right now.
I mean, I said it in a couple interviews already. I'm going to just keep reusing my card, but look good, feel good, play good. I think that's a very easy way to go about it.
So coming from the SEC, you guys are looked at as a bit of an underdog. Do you and your team feel like you guys are underdogs?
Not really anymore, no. I mean, we can use it as an excuse if we lose, but I don't think any of us really sees this team as an underdog anymore.
Deathwalker, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, and good luck in your game, guys. Give it up to Deathwalker. And let's head back to the desk.
If he was wearing the full black, he could have just said it was like the Bolts funeral or something.
God bless.
I was
Never
hoping
gonna
that.
lack from trash talk from Deathwalker.
I'm the
I
biggest
was a little
fan.
worried. He was kind of winding up there. I thought we might get something a little bit more extreme. I think we can be happy with the amount of tame that was.
Yeah, we got to right to the precipice, cut it off before anything
Yeah.
could go a little too far. Man, it's just such a good matchup. Hurry, I was talking to you right before the interview, and I want to ask more about this. The turnaround potential this team has had. It's a best of 3, so they've only got one game in hand that they can actually drop. But it's so insane what this team has done. I mean, in best of 5s, right? They'll go down, and then immediately the adjustments they make in game number 2, game 3, it just feels like a different team that can show up.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, one thing about the European teams that you really have to give them is they're very good at adjusting mid-sets, like you're mentioning, Gore. They're not afraid to pull out new strategies. If something's not working, you'll rarely see them run it back. They'll always do some sort of drastic changes and pull out some new picks for us to see.
Well, speaking of picks, we've got picks and bans here. Game number 1 of quarterfinal number 2, Bolts taking on Hex Mambo. And I'm certain that this one, at least to me, is going to be polarizing, right? I feel like there's just so much energy on both of these sides. Picks and bans, once they start up, going to be a huge deal to me. Where do you think the priority is, Mifflin? Like, what are we looking for? Are we looking for junglers? Are we looking for solo laners? Carries? Is Danza going to be picked up for BaRRA?
It really is hard to say because I don't know that there's a whole lot of overlap in priority picks. So when I think of Johnny's jungle god pool, I'm not looking at LASBRA and saying, well, they're going to fight over this pick. Or when I look at the solo lane, maybe you can see some contention there. I would take notice towards some of the flavor picks, of course. Hex Mambo has been going towards the Chronos ad nauseum, ad infinitum. They will go to it at every single opportunity. Besides that, maybe Pele as an option. LASBRA's really leaned on that pick recently. Otherwise, it's hard to say. It's a wild card.
Her, do you have any feelers out there that have kind of, especially since you got to play last week, something that's maybe a little more updated since the last time we saw the Bolts?
I think we're going to see a high AMA prioritization from both these teams. I know it's Deathwalker's go-to solo laner right now, and I know it's something Baskin has prioritized a lot in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of their draft strategy from the Bolts kind of centers around either taking it away or banning it. And now that they've gone through their first phase of bans, I expect it'll probably be a first pick AMA. Maybe a little bit of a leap from me, but that's what I feel.
Now, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but I'm going to anyway. One game of AMA from Baskin, actually, the last time we got to see him in the tournament, did lose. So, like, I don't know. I guess I'm just saying it's not going to hard carry, but it is still a very good pick for them. A lot of Danza that got picked up more than any other god.
Wow.
But instead, they're putting their faith in Jake here, Mifflin. They lock in the Ymir first and foremost.
I mean, it's really good into some of the pressure picks that I had expected to get locked in. When Ishtar is available, almost just given for granted that it's going to be the pickup. But Ymir into Ishtar as a matchup, pretty good. Getting Jake on one of his priority picks. And as Hurry had said, Deathwalker very likely to go towards the Amaterasu, another pick that really struggles against this structure. I like the Ymir lock-in, but it is one that could fall prey to some of the weaknesses that the 408 has had to deal with throughout his career, which is positioning. If you step out of line on Ymir, you're going back to base one way or another.
I mean, we've talked to Neil about it, right? Almost every time. He's like, look, you're either going like 0-4 and 20, or you're going 0-20 and 4. Like you are, there's no in between. You are either feeding your brains out, or you are the reason your team is finding a lot of success. We got to see. I'm going to give them the shout out. The Ravens playing the Ymir earlier, looking really good on that one. And so I expect for the Bolts being able to step up to that. But the Ishtar, the Ama gets locked in. Do any of the bands stand out? I mean, the Hoblob you specifically mentioned earlier, Hurry, is something that Johnny really likes. .G feels right up there. I'm surprised that the Fafnir, like, Trix keeps going to it for whatever reason, but, like, it's not, in my mind, one of the higher priorities that we've seen, except from Hex Mambo.
I think it's really interesting to see the Bolts kind of choosing to take away Trixtank's picks instead. It's kind of what's happening here with the Fafnir ban and with the Ymir first pick. After these two picks, he was going towards the Sobek. Maybe the Bolts are really happy if that's where Trixtank decides to go next. So that might be part of their game plan, to try to get Trixtank on something much worse. Artio actually being hovered here for the Bolts, potentially locked in actually, along with the Cernunnos, I think is a very interesting pickup. Maybe nod to a potential double hunter draft for the Bolts later on here.
Especially from what we've seen, Artio has been a little more sparse, but I mean, still healing, really good control and CC. You mentioned the Sobek. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I should wait until it gets either locked in or banned. It just feels like something that Hurry has, or not Hurry, that Trix has really, really loved. How do you feel about the Cernunnos overall, Mifflin? It feels like it's been playing second string to Ishtar, and it almost always is in that like weird area. And you can ignore that, actually. Let's just talk about the Mercury. It's Johnny's pick. It just feels good.
I'll hit them both for you, all right? Let's start with the Mercury. I love Mercury as a pick for Johnny. I know that he's capable of hyper-carrying, but when he has played Mercury, especially in the most recent event, it was largely flanked by other late-game spool-up hyper carries that can't facilitate some of the earlier game weaknesses. I'm not of the thought process that Mercury is, hey, I can't play until I'm level 20. If I don't have 2 crit items, I'm not going to play. But it certainly is a bit slower than the standard Eye of the Jungle, May Start junglers, the ones that can really pressure around level 3. So I think I really want to see a difference from Zyrhoes here. I want to see him on a combat mage. I don't want the Chronos 3,000 damage 20 minutes in, 15,000 structure damage, because if that is the case, this is a composition already from the Bolts that could start to run over Hex Mambo if given a lead in the early. This is a draft that I would declare a win harder composition. If you're in a good position, it's pretty hard to drop it from there. The chase down potential from this Ymir, and now every single pick that Mambo have taken for themselves, all incredibly strong. So love that. And as for Cern, I'll keep it simple. Ymir's burning beads, you need someone to make use of it. Cern does it really well with the Wild Hunt, and it's one of the few hunters that has the ability to 1v1 match up with this Ishtar.
One that I'm personally really excited to watch it. Do you have any thoughts on the matchup?
Sure. I mean, we've seen this matchup a lot of times between the Chronos and the Ishtar. What the Ishtar does really well that I want you guys to pay attention to is that she just clears the wave really well. So you're probably going to pair her with the support that's going to group the wave so you can clear the wave fast. Not necessarily as good fighting as this other lane, but that is where Ishtar really shines.
Speaking of support, we got to see the Maui last game, and it's something that has kind of come through every now and then. I don't know that we've gotten to see it from Trixtank, though.
I don't know if he
think that either of them are, I mean, well, obviously not Jake with the Ymir lock-in. Do you think it's going to come through, or are we still kind of setting our eyes on the Sobek first?
I hope so, because I think it's a really strong pick right now, as you've seen prioritized by other teams so far, and in the qualifier event. But we haven't seen Trixtank play it, like you said. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he goes back towards the Sobek. I mean, they've seen success with it. I'm not the biggest Sobek fan. I think a lot of people aren't the biggest Sobek fans. But they see success with it, and that is usually what he goes back to.
I'll give him credit where credit's due. I'm not normally like a huge Sobek fan individually, but I'm a big fan of Trixtank Sobek, right? It's got like an 80% win rate, Mifflin. He's just been kind of running the show on that pick.
Look, I love Trixtank Sobek, okay? I get it. Look, he dashes in at level 2. I get it. It's dope. It's super cool. Are we playing it into Artio? Do we want to deal with this cripple field? She's a brick wall for Sobek to have to walk through. It'd be very difficult. Instead, put him on a Guardian that gets active nonetheless. The Bacchus, a little bit more consistent with these AoE stuns. It's matching up some of that burst potential. Intoxicate deceptive in how much damage it really does. And if Hex Mambo is allowed to establish their pace, and Hurry, I'd love to hear your opinion on this because I'm told it's one of my most controversial. I think Bacchus is the best Guardian in the game at 50 minutes in. He's tankier than everybody else because of Chug. His initiation is linear. He's got ability to force beads on his own, and the damage output follows. I mean, I'm in love with this pick.
I think there's an argument to be had.
Okay.
I'm not going to give it that.
Diplomatic.
Everyone is going to hit max protection cap later in the game anyway.
Yep.
Chug usually is kind of overkill at that point.
But he
What
put
is really
real
strong about
damage.
him is his ultimate, now that it
Yep.
doesn't DR anymore. It is extremely effective throughout the entire game. You don't have to worry about any kind of CC overlap. His engage is his jump, which is always going to leave him a little bit out to dry potentially,
Tough.
so we'll have to see how that works out for him.
Well, you had mentioned earlier, Mifflin, and just to touch on the bans as they came through, that you didn't want to see the Chronos. Good news. It literally can't be banned out alongside the Baba Yaga.
I
So
was surprised by that.
Zyrhoes is actually going to have to go to something new. Other side, it was the Pele, as well as the Morrigan, making it pretty far down considering what we've seen in terms of high priority ban pressure. You mentioned the Bacchus, Osiris, and Chiron gets locked in. And the Chiron, hurry, this has been a Vin pick through and through. Yeah,
Yep.
BaRRA can play it, but Vin loves this.
World's time for Ven, picking
Yep.
this Chiron. It is double hunter. I feel good I at least called that one right. And I do think that is probably the playstyle that the Bolts succeed in when they have mid-priority and when they get LASBRA on something aggressive. And I think they've done both of those things here. So I think they should feel comfortable with how they've rounded out this draft.
It's the aggression, specifically, Mifflin. You had said you wanted to see something that gets hands-on early. And Osiris gets hands-on early, especially compared to a Mercury. It feels like that is setting up the Bolts for some success.
Yeah, I mean, this is one where LASBRA could really outpace this Mercury on map. Global presence always going to be difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
BaRRaCCuDDa maybe has some of the most, I suppose, history dealing with this Mercury pick. I call it the Bear Award. Put it between Tier 1 and Tier 2. It makes it very difficult for Dzoni to get involved on that side of the map. But I want to highlight this Tiamat pick.
Yeah.
It's one that we've seen a lot in the EU SEC, maybe not particularly from Zyrhoes himself. Thrice, maybe 4 times in the last couple of months. But as far as being able to fight and facilitate this Mercury, it's better than anything else we've seen from him. What's your other fallback? Is it going to be the Changa that he so often goes towards throughout the regular season? I don't think so. I think this Tiamat, sure, going to require maybe 6-7 levels. Primordial Onslaught, very weak in the early game. Need that ability to start spooling up. But once you get to that point, I'm thinking around level 7 to 8. You've got a standard mage, and you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, waiting for the mid-game, late game for Hex Mambo with a Mercury pickup. The other side, the Osiris in the jungle, looks like he might be running the show. It's Bolts versus Mambo, and it's game number 1 with J-Mac and Trelly.
Thank you so much, Gormizer and the Desk, for getting the breakdown for us. The Olympus Bolts, the number 4 SPL seed coming in this tournament, Trelly, and Hex Mambo, the EU powerhouse out of the SCC, a team made up of, well, former SPL players. Everybody except for their Hunter has been in the SPL at some point in their career. And kind of talking about some of the scaling of this game here, Charlie, I think the Death sets up perfect. Might be looking towards a late game for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, I find it interesting and also extremely confident from the Olympus Bolts to draft the way they did. There's not a person in this venue that didn't think Ishtar and Amaterasu were going to be the first 2 picks after that Ymir was locked in. That tells me, A, the Bolts knew this was coming, and B, they had a plan for it. I think that Awesome Jake can make some big plays here. Those walls could be extremely impactful with trying to shut down what Dzoni wants to do. Sonic Boom is a great tool, but it doesn't go through walls.
Yeah, Sonic Boom is going to be where we're keeping a lot of our eyes on, especially with this Mercury. Dzoni, though, one of the few Mercury players who really likes to get involved very early in the game. Typically, you wait till level 9 once you get that first crit item online or so. Then you kind of start seeing those ganks through. Dzoni, it seems as soon as he hits level 5, and maybe even sooner than that, he loves to jump into these lanes.
Yeah, he has the ability to get super aggressive, but also he can say, hey, I'm going to get Golden Blade, and I'm going to go farm. I'll see you guys later on.
Well, game number 1 between the Olympus Bolts and Hex Mambo kicks off right here and right now. Jumping into this event, you would have called maybe Hex Mambo the underdog, but if you ask almost anybody out there, the story goes 50-50. Between these 2 teams. Seeing Venenu go back to this Chiron as well, Charlie, something the Desk briefly touched on. This is a pick that when Venenu has felt uncomfortable in a position sometimes, especially when you think of big teams like the Dragons, where Pagon was constantly running at him, a safe pick for that mid lane, but also something he can get so much range damage out with.
Yeah, I'm looking at Zyrhoes once again. I mean, the Chronos was banned away. He loves playing that PvE style from the mid lane. Tiamat can do it. She's got the lizards. I almost was expecting the early on Nuwa, right? He likes to play that god, helps with the structure damage later on, but what Zyrhoes does have on this Tiamat is incredible safety. You don't really have to worry about LASBRA early on as long as you're using that dash effectively. And as long as you're leaping away, you really don't have to worry about any early ganks.
Well, the meta that we have come to know and love, the support's kind of battling out early on, but we won't actually see an attempted invade by Jake. Trixtank is keeping him at bay, so it'll just be normal starts. at least over for our dual lane. And I think that a lot of eyes for this team, for the Olympus Bolts, is on Jake and on LASBRA as well. LASBRA, if he can have a really standout performance, when LASBRA's popping off, it feels like his energy carries with the rest of this team. Jake is always kind of the big question mark, especially on this Ymir. We've seen some of the best and sometimes some of the worst Ymir from this one. And I think for the Bolts fans and for Jake and everybody else, hoping that this is one of the big ones for him.
Well, I mean, the Bolts have done just that, trying to set up both LASBRA and Jake. The Osiris with Mannequin Scepter almost can't lose in the early, especially not up against a Mercury. You're going to be winning those trades, you're going to be getting active, but I think Dzoni is trying to stay as far away from that Osiris as possible, sitting around Deathwalker. These two are attached at the hip. They're going to share a lot of farm, but they're also going to share a lot of kills. Awesome Jake, however, on this Ymir, he's going to run up. I mean, he does not want to stay past the halfway mark on this lane pretty much ever. He's going to try and get that Indra Scepter, which it looks like the Bolts have plenty of pressure on the left side of the map, and they're going to continue to try and play through BaRRaCCuDDa.
I'm waiting to see where LASBRA makes that first step. Does he try and get some pressure onto Zyrhoes in mid? Does he rotate over to dual lane and try and put Echrome and Trixtank in an uncomfortable position? Seems the early pressure is over towards the mid lane, at least for the Bolts. And with a Chiron, with an Osiris, no surprise, seeing that Zyrhoes is going to have to maybe play a little bit more passive on this Tiamat. But that's just the name of the game for Zyrhoes. I mean, we go and look at Chronos games of past. We see a ban this time where he's putting up only like 8,000 damage, but is absolutely melting through structures late game. Feels that Hex Mambo, especially with this comp and the pressure the Bolts have, feels like this could go real late for Hex Mambo.
Yeah, no doubt. And if it does, I think it actually favors Hex Mambo. You can tell the Bolts were like, okay, if we do go late, we have double Hunter. However, let's try and play through the left side of the map. We know that Johnny's going to spend a lot of time over with Deathwalker. We want to make sure that BaRRA is ahead. We want to make sure Ven can make those rotations over. There's plenty of damage to be had from the Chiron mid as well. It all depends on how safe you're able to play. When you throw Baskin on Artio, you're probably assuming he's going to be playing pretty safe.
Venenu already starting with a red buff invade and even pushing up back behind the tier 1 tower. That gives Jake and Trixtank time to rotate in. Trixtank goes in for the hog save, making sure that the mid laner will get his buff, but a boxing match between the Hunters. Quick backflip away by Echrome on that jolt will get him back to the safety of the tower line.
Yeah, that's going to be a good call, but the purple buff is still available, and look at Awesome Jake trying to bully as much as possible. Echrome doesn't have good burst, and Trix already had to use that hog for the steal on red. Another flop in, will be able to confirm it, and he gets out scot-free.
He's too clean with it. Trixtank has been doing this time and time again. Remember, this is a man who has been playing since the earliest days of SMITE. He was all the way back when hog was necessary for supports, and has run all the way through to where it wasn't even a thing in the game for a while. So no surprise seeing that Trixtank knows his numbers. Deathwalker in a bit of danger. The Bolts are trying to strike first in the solo lane. Slow onto Deathwalker, but the tier 1 tower is there to give him some safety, and the Bolts will have to back away.
Yeah, not enough damage there, and LASBRA didn't really feel comfortable diving into that tower. Didn't have level 5 either. Lord of the Afterlife may have netted a kill. It's not easy though with that Amaterasu trying to find that dash out. Plenty of ways it can get blocked, plenty of ways it could get canceled. All Deathwalker knew was he needed to get away from that tether, and he was able to. Still though, pressure on the left side of the map isn't really working out for the Bolts. They wanted that purple buff, they wanted that red buff, but Trix comes up big both times. I'd say letting this game go later and letting this Mercury get online, certainly in favor of Hex Mambo.
Has been very slow from Hex Mambo early on, just playing defensively for now. I'm ready to see maybe where that first strike of aggression comes from, and I gotta imagine that's gonna be on the hands of Trixtank. This Bacchus is something we saw very early on in the season, Shirley, that was such a staple pick for a lot of supports. At level 2 flop in and freeze combo just made it so dangerous in the dual lane. So I gotta imagine a lot of onuses at least on Trixtank to try and start these fights out.
Yeah, he's playing aggressive as you can. When you know where LASBRA is, you can flop on every wave. When you have no idea where that Osiris is, you probably saving that one for an escape just to be okay. But no ultimates just yet for Trixtank. That Intoxicate is a decent fight tool, but also it helps out with the peel. I've been keeping my eyes on this Mercury. Johnny goes back to base, wants to finish up that Golden Blade, get some extra farm online. I'm waiting to see that Sonic Boom send out, but it looks like realizing both lanes aren't doing so hot fight-wise, he's not going to even charge it up. Doesn't look like the left side of the map is anywhere that Johnny wants to fight for the time being.
Small battle for the scepter, but that one does go to the Olympus Bolts, and still maintaining a very slow-paced game is Hex Mambo. I mean, when you look at Amaterasu, Mercury, Tiamat, even Bacchus to some degree, I mean, this isn't really a composition that screams that we want to fight in the first 5, maybe even 10 or so minutes of the game. So it might be a little while before we really see the action ramp up, especially between these junglers, though. Dzoni, waiting to see where he makes his first strike. We saw LASBRA's attempt on the right side of the map, but now that Deathwalker's had a chance to go back to base, should be able to get his Golden Blade soon as well. Don't imagine we'll see LASBRA stick around to the right too much longer.
No, definitely not. I mean, when you have double ADC and you know that Johnny's going to be babysitting the right side of the map, Gold Fury has to be the topic of conversation. It spawns in way before Pyro here. You know you can burn it down very quickly, but actually Johnny is going to spend some time over on the left, maybe trying to get those oracles. Knows it could be a threat, wanting to make sure as much vision as you can is going to be on this Gold Fury, and that's going to be a smart call. Probably recognize, hey, if I'm ganking Deathwalker consistently, there's a good to fair chance that Gold Fury gets looked at.
We do have at least some of the first power spikes for our mid laners coming online. Transcendence for Venenu on the Chiron, Book of Thoth on the opposite side for Zero. So a little bit of stacking early on to get some of those huge power numbers for these mids. We do see LASBRA's early rotation over to Duo. Not going to get a whole lot, just kind of scaring maybe Trixtank back. Looked like they were trying to pressure up for some kind of purple buff, but not going to find anything yet. Instead, Dzoni will tease the Sonic Boom. We'll see where he throws that first one out. And I think that's where the first impact of Hex Mambo will come through. Echrome in danger, uses the ult, but still has the immunity and the beads after to get away. But that was BaRRA ult for both forms of escape out of Echrome.
Yeah, that's not good. I mean, Echrome wanted to just use that ultimate, was a little bit afraid of how much damage was going to follow up. Trix is on the way back, but still playing through BaRRaCCuDDa has netted a little bit of aggression here for the Olympus Bolts. No beads, very low HP, the Ishtar. One wall could be it, and it looks like Awesome Jake will find it, but the jolt too quick. Echrome will be fine for now. You got to imagine some aggression though on the left side of the map. You got a solid 2 minutes or so, but this Ishtar could be in trouble.
Surprised we don't see any rotation from Mambo at all. I mean, BaRRaCCuDDa has been on this tier 1 tower line for the last 3 or so minutes of the game. We see Jake rotate over, finds the freeze on Dzoni, snipes from the Chiron, get a little bit of damage to Dzoni, but not quite enough just yet. Those damage numbers haven't quite hit for the mid laner of the Olympus Bolts. Jake may have stuck around a little too long, going for an offering steal, belly flop in, charge up the shards of ice, but just not enough damage from Mambo. The Bolts get out again.
Yeah, but it looks like LASBRA's on the way over. This could be dangerous if Mambo sticks around. Sonic Boom to get Dzoni out of trouble with a purple buff invade is what the Bolts are after, and they're gonna be able to grab that one. Huge win, but low health bars. Hex Mambo cannot step up any further.
Damage from Ven may not be high just yet, but you can see what that Masterful Shot does. Zyrhoes is able to get out of the tether range just in time from LASBRA to avoid the stun. It could have been a commit from Laz, should he have found that. But this pressure by the Bolts is not really netting him too much of a lead just yet, still sitting very even this early on in the game. Really the only tangible lead has been so far from the Hunters of the dual lane. Echrome falling just a little bit behind BaRRaCCuDDa.
Yeah, and that's just by nature of Awesome Jake sitting around this lane a bit longer. You could tell, Trix wants to rotate out. I mean, he keeps walking away and goes, you really need me back, man? All right, I'll come back over to Duo. Your beads are down. But after that, I want to go flop. I want to go look at this Chiron, for example. That's level 10. Ven has been farming the map extremely well for the early game. 8 minutes in, top of the XP per minute charts, and he wants to try to continue that. But you know Deathwalker's playstyle. He's got the Golden Blade as well, and there it is. He already overtook him, and he's going to continue running to farm as quickly as possible. If LASBRA doesn't make the rotation over, you got to assume that Amaterasu is going to make some big waves come level 20.
I mean, this is just what the EU-SCC did all the way back to Spring Masters. I mean, this is a region that was playing to that 35, 40-minute style of game. We wouldn't even see solo rotate out until level 20 was hit at that point. So the fact that we're even seeing action in the solo lane, maybe a breath of fresh air for some of the people from that region. Greater Scorpion invade, though, successful by the Olympus Bolts, able to take that one away and start slowly bleeding out this map to Hex Mambo. But it just feels like the Bolts aren't doing quite enough. I mean, this is the pace that Hex Mambo wants.
Yeah, this is playing into their hand for sure. But again, you got the double ADC. BaRRaCCuDDa's got a small lead. Objectives still look in favor of the Olympus Bolts unless Dzoni can get that Rage online and start getting it stacked up. I mean, the right side of the map only has so much. Deathwalker is going to make that rotation over. Maybe a Pyromancer could be looked at later on once it spawns in, but you got to imagine the Gold Fury, much more valuable at this time around. And once again, BaRRaCCuDDa steps up, beats down the Sonic Boom, but no more chase. Dzoni's happy with that.
He will take the even trade, and that's BaRRaCCuDDa's only answer to Sonic Boom. No CC immunity in the kit for the Cernunnos, so BaRRaCCuDDa's going to have to keep his eyes on the far outskirts of the lane. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he calls for Jake to throw a ward all the way down between those two towers to know if Dzoni's rotating back over through, as the classic Mercury style of play that really Sam for Soccer kind of repopularized back last season. We saw it start coming back just a little bit now. Jockeying up for the red buff are the Olympus Bolts, but not going to step too far forward. With 3 members of Hex Mambo there, Bolts aren't going to step too far.
Yeah, they want this engagement. I mean, the Bolts are trying to find these fights, but they don't want to overstep for it. I mean, they go for a wall from Awesome Jake. They peek around a wall, look at a ward, but they're not going to force anything. They want to try and climb this lead up as quickly as possible, but they don't want to go for any risky calls. Pyromancer has spawned in, and this is what I was talking about, with Deathwalker being able to clear the way fast and rotate out of lane. Could be looked at, but it looks like the Olympus Bolts are going to be the first ones to pull this. No one's even close. This should be free.
Pyromancer to the Olympus Bolts, maybe.
Zyrhoes.
No, Zyrhoes steals it away. The first objective of the game goes to the SCC powerhouse off the back of their mid laner.
That is so little damage that Zyrhoes even has to steal that one away. Ridiculous numbers. I cannot believe with how much vision Hex Mambo has on that side of the map that they weren't the ones to make that call, but the Olympus Bolts, despite being up on the left, decided to go for Pyromancer, and Zyrhoes makes them pay for it. That's a huge steal for Hex Mambo.
And a nice swing to at least bring the gold slightly to their favor, but at this point of the game, still sitting dead even. But that is a great momentum shift for Hex Mambo at this point. Mid laner Zyrhoes getting active, as you mentioned. Minuscule damage on that ability to steal that one away. Good call by Zyrhoes, sniffing that one out.
Yeah, and now finally Johnny gets that rage stacked, or at least online, so we can start stacking it up. BaRRaCCuDDa no more beads for another 50 seconds, but it looks like immediately gonna be able to pull this Gold Fury. Last time I said there was no one around, and this time it's actually true. This will be 2 free objectives going the way of Hex Mambo.
So Zyrhoes steals one away, the rest of the team group up, and Hex Mambo grabs the first Gold Fury of the game, and now that will get them their first shift in the gold lead to start things out and kind of bring back some of that, and I should say more so close the gap that BaRRaCCuDDa is starting up over Echrome. Still about a level, closer down to about a half now. Even Trixtank getting up ahead of Awesome Jake at this point. But I think you brought up a good point earlier. The Olympus Bolts have been wanting to try and get these fights going. They've wanted to get these invades, but they're just too afraid to step too far up.
I find it interesting thinking about both these teams' playstyles that we saw a Pyromancer and a Gold Fury before a first play. I mean, both of these teams are very capable of looking for those early on engagements. You could see the Olympus Bolts are fishing for them, but Pyromancer stolen away, and the Gold Fury just pulled and done by Hex Mambo. Still no stacks on that rage, but you saw how much damage was going towards that Fury. The lucky crit's really all they needed. Deathwalker hitting level 14. This game is going slow but steady in favor of the Mambo.
Deathwalker with that very slight lead over in the solo lane. Golden Blade Berserker Shield to start out his build, and now working in towards the Rope Tree for a little bit of extra defense. And Deathwalker, I can't wait to see what this man can do when he finally steps out of the solo lane. Haven't seen him anywhere pretty much except for his blue buff and back harpies. Now we'll step towards the Scorpion, which will go towards Hex Mambo, this slow bleed out of play. It's so similar to what we see out of the Camelot Kings, where they're not going to take a fight if they don't need to. They're just going to wait for the enemy to step too far up and punish them at that point.
I like the way the Baskin's decided to itemize, though. I mean, he's got the Divine Rune online, fully upgraded teleport. That could be massive. If Hex Mambo ever do decide to start fighting and step up on the left side of the map, this Artio could be there in a flash, and that could really turn the tides. The one issue I see, though, is no beads for this Artio. I feel like a fair bit of lockdown on the side of Hex Mambo here, CC-wise. I think that Artio could have some trouble living on, especially if Zyrhoes is in the fight. A lot of magical damage online already with the double flat pen, and not too much prot. You got to imagine Baskin's building into it. They'll get some magical defense online, try and help out, but still no brawling. 14 minutes in, very small damage numbers.
And to kind of also echo what you were saying with Baskin there, instead of the beads, it was a fully upgraded teleport plus a blink. So some initiation, some quick get around the map style of play, but until we actually see Baskin leave the lane or the Olympus Bolts try and step up to be aggressive, it feels like at the moment it's a very heavy gold investment that hasn't really seen the rewards just yet. Maybe a fight over the Scepter could get things kicking off on the left side of the map. Trading blows are the two hunters with the objective itself.
What?
But Echrome dashed in aggressively, uses the Aegis, beads are down, as well as the ultimate to dash in, and here comes Baskin from the solo. It's first blood to BaRRaCCuDDa and the Bolts.
I cannot believe Echrome jolted in, and now Trix is in all sorts of trouble. Here comes LASBRA, he wants to dive. Who's gonna get it? And it looks like LASBRA will get credit for that one. What a terrible, terrible fight there for Mambo. They thought it was just an interceptor, didn't know about the vision, and that is why you upgrade that teleport. Massive rotation in from Baskin. 2-0 for the Olympus Bolts.
I can't imagine that dash was intentional by Echrome. Felt like he was trying to back away, the wall went through, and then he may have panicked. LASBRA jumps in against Zyrhoes, the 2v1, but LASBRA is losing this battle, and he goes down. Dzoni strikes first for Mambo, but an immediate answer back by Venenu. Could be a turn onto Zyrhoes. Dash by Baskin will get in there, needs the stun to set up, will do so. Venenu kicks him back in the dirt, and it's 4 for the Olympus Bolts.
The Olympus Bolts know where to find their aggression. In the left lane, they found it. I liked the aggression back, though. Dzoni was able to get one of those rage stacks, but Zyrhoes and Dzoni hung out to dry after that fight. Then 2-0 on this Chiron, making some big plays here for his team. Remember, the gold lead still in favor of Mambo. Getting a Pyromancer and a Gold Fury this early on will do that. But also, Baskin teleported away. I mean, Deathwalker just kept pushing. He stayed over in right lane. This Amaterasu has not gotten his hands dirty yet. Gonna keep clearing out, but the Pyromancer has respawned. Last time it was stolen, and Trixtank is watching.
Trixtank, can he find a steal up on an objective this time? Has tier 2 Intoxicate. That's a lot of damage. Deathwalker rotates with them, starts up the belch, but the Bolts will get the Pyromancer and answer back. Now retaking the lead away from Hex Mambo at this point, and a lot of this off the back of the aggression that has come from this dual lane and from LASBRA getting active.
Yeah, Echrome smells something's fishy, knows LASBRA's close by at the very least, not gonna step up too far on the left side of the map, but Oni Fury is spawning in here, J-Mac. This could be absolutely massive for whichever team is open to make a play. Take a look at the relics of the Bolts. LASBRA's gonna have nothing if this is pulled right away. And you can see the beat sound from BaRRaCCuDDa. Ven's sitting just fine though. I mean, this Chiron, this 2-0, he's got no problem trying to fight if possible, especially if Awesome Jake is there to set up for some free kills. You gotta think Hex Mambo's gonna be keen to this, but so far, BaRRaCCuDDa's pulling it by himself.
Does have some backup from Venenu on the way. Here comes Trixtank as well, but this Fury is melting. Trixtank won't even make it to the pit. And the Olympus Bolts have answered back. A Pyro and a Fury to start for Mambo, and now a Pyro and a Fury for the Olympus Bolts to take the lead for themselves. 4-1 in the kills, and just a little over 1,000 gold in the lead.
Yeah, XP-wise though, you gotta take a look at the jungle. Dzoni's able to pull ahead of LASBRA. Ven is able to pull ahead of Zyrhoes, and still BaRRaCCuDDa on top in the duo lane. That does start to add up. Itemization-wise, it's gonna hurt. Echrome's going for more of a crit. He's got the Shadow Steal and into the Executioner. Good objective damage there, whereas BaRRa, no crit, Xe into Kins. That's gonna hurt these tanks. Deathwalker's been farming up, trying to get ahead so he can fight before that penetration and Shred actually gets online. But BaRRa was forced into it. He knew there's going to be a very tanky Yama coming through. Now Deathwalker's being looked at, and he's going to get dope.
Uses the ultimate, but how good will that be? A dash in by Baskin under the tier 1, but a quick dash away by Deathwalker. Jake finds the wall. LASBRA chopping away. That's Jake to take him down. Trixtank able to jump away, but the Bolts put up yet another kill.
Yeah, this time Johnny's on the left side of the map. Nowhere to be seen to help out in that fight. Loses the ultimate, dazzling offensive down, and the beads. But the Bolts aren't looking for anything just yet. I was looking at BaRRaCCuDDa. Would he rotate over for a Fire Giant call off of one kill this early on? No, just gonna do the green buff red and probably go back over to left. Looks like the Bolts are gonna play this one slow, go for a tower, and just try to keep pushing their lead further and further ahead before forcing an objective. That Fire Giant was possible, but it looks like they're not looking to make any pulls just yet.
Careful play by Dzoni. Baskin once again rotates out of solo. Deathwalker's been down for so long because of this lead he's built up. Level 19 just earlier on. BaRRaCCuDDa dashes in. LASBRA joins him and puts out about half the HP of Zyrhoes. Now forced to the back of the tower, but the Centaurus snipes. Third one off the mark, but the Aegis will stop one. Baskin goes in. It's not enough damage until Ven steps up. And the Olympus Bolts mid laner take out the tower and their opposition.
Ven goes absolutely massive there, and now we're seeing that grouping around the Fire Giant. It wasn't the pick on a Deathwalker they wanted. It was the pick onto Zyrhoes. The Olympus Bolts are grouped around the FG. They're not going to go for the pull just yet. They want to see what they can find, but both ADCs are poised and ready.
Deathwalker has ult, doesn't have his beads. For another 80 seconds, maybe they can find a pick onto Trixtank, able to jump back over that wall, and the Bolts will once again make their grouping over by fire. See if they can find a pick. And a close wall. Lucky for Dzoni, still holding onto the blink to escape.
Yeah, Fire Giant started up here, but Deathwalker and Trix, the first ones into the pit. They want to try and stop this. They don't want to go for a steal, but now they're blocked in a corridor.
Baskin dashes to 3, but will retreat as soon as he sees the group up. Frenzy pop in the backline. The Bolts have picked the Fire Giant back up, and the Olympus Bolts need the damage to confirm this one. They do, and it's Fire Giant to start the game for the Bolts. 20 minutes in, but they are on the run. LASBRA's HP not looking too healthy after the objective.
Yeah, Johnny wants to find the 1v1 versus LASBRA. There's so many more Bolts here. You're not going to get that opportunity. Definitely going to have to ult out here unless BaRRA misses, and it looks like not going to be the call. Needed that root. Needed that cripple to keep Johnny down, but Fire Giant onto 5 of the Olympus Bolts, and they've got plenty of time to play this one slow. Echrome thought about making that full-on rotation, but is going to go back over and take as much farm as he can. That's a massive play there. I mean, it was close. Johnny almost stepped up, had the Sonic Boom charged, but did not fire it, and now the Bolts are in a commanding position.
We haven't seen a true 5v5 team yet, even a real 4v4. It's been these very lopsided engagements that the Olympus Bolts have been starting up. They TKO one player and then jump themselves in. And because of that, Hex Mambo haven't been able to find their answer back yet. And with only a 4,000 gold lead so far, Olympus Bolts with this fire have a few minutes to start building up. Where would you like to see the Bolts maybe start to put some of this pressure on the map?
I mean, they've got that tier 1 on left they got to go for. 3 more tier 2s. Hex Mambo can't give everything up for free, though. I mean, that's just way too much gold to leave on the field to get for free. I mean, the Olympus Bolts don't have that massive of a lead yet. I think the fight back could be possible underneath the tier 2. But if you let the Bolts grab everything, head back to base, and spend up that gold, you're essentially forfeiting the next Fire Giant if that defense goes well. It looks like the tier 2 is the call for now, but Awesome Jake is hiding. He wants to find a good wall here. Not going to get too much. Echrome's going to be fine.
And with that scepter, at least around Echrome, make sure that tower will be able to regenerate small poke, but this isn't really small poke from BaRRaCCuDDa. He will melt through that tower with the help of Venenu, and Jake standing by. Towers of the left lane completely stripped off the map. The Olympus Bolts now have an opening to the Phoenix. 4-man rotation towards mid. It's only LASBRA for the moment, but Hex Mambo not going to step up just yet. Waiting to see how many of the Bolts follow up and at least get behind their mid.
Yeah, tier 2 on left going down isn't huge. Hex Mambo can still try and defend in the mid, but look at this. They're still splitting up. They're letting Echrome split left. They're going to let Johnny try and get some farm on right. They want level 20. Those upgraded starter items could be massive. A little bit of a scrap here of Johnny, but he's so quick. Will be able to run out just fine and not force anything else. Both relics still available for that Mercury. And now it's just a good poke.
Baskin to the back line. Didn't have his blink, but doesn't need it. The damage is good from Venenu. A little more will drop down Echrome. The Bolts take the tier 2 tower and maybe a little bit more. Trixtank crippled out by Baskin, but Baskin is taking a little too much damage from the Phoenix. He will back away. But the health bars of Mambo are not looking great, Trelly.
Yeah, this Phoenix could be the next target. Some low health bars for sure, and Trixtank did go back to base. Johnny just going for speed buff at this point, doesn't even care about the mid burden. It looks like the Olympus Bolts want the more valuable one. They want that left side Phoenix. They want the farthest away from Fire Giant, the most difficult to defend. They still have a man lead until Echrome comes back in 25 seconds. Not going to be easy, but Hex Mambo have some tools to try and defend here. Sonic Boom, keep your eyes on Johnny.
Gonna be a hard defense. Freeze on the one. A belly flop intoxicate from the support, but Hex Mambo are losing this fight. Trixtank, the first one down in the fight, and so is the left side bird. The Olympus Bolts got everything they wanted and more to start this out.
I mean, it's just so much damage coming from this Chiron. Ven is able to just burst down anyone that steps up, as well as the masterful shot. Even if you get hit by one single auto attack or that ultimate, you're getting chunked down by these Heartseeker procs. It's too much for the Hex Mambo to stand up to at the moment. They've been trying to find as much sneaky farm as they can, maybe some extra procs, maybe some extra damage. I haven't seen too much fight back. 8-1, and that one was quite a while ago.
It's been a while since Hex Mambo have really been the aggressive team. We're starting to see a pretty dangerous gold lead spiral up for the Olympus Bolts. We are sitting at 8,000 and climbing, with still one more tower on the map to go. And now with the Fire Giant buff wearing off the Bolts, that'll at least give them a moment to breathe, go back to base, and spend up the massive amount of gold in pocket. I mean, look at how much Jake is holding on to. He's got a full item and more waiting to go back.
Yeah, they just have it's too difficult for Johnny to go in. I mean, the way he's itemized, he's got blink and beads, no Aegis. If Ven just hits 2 ult shots, that fight's over. There's no reason for Merc to be in the backline anymore, and that's usually been the engage. I mean, BaRRaCCuDDa has so much shred, but if you're standing at Phoenix line, you are in range of Venenu. If you are standing near him, you are able to get half health, and this next Fire Giant should be just as free. I mean, Deathwalker can teleport in about 20 seconds, so he's able to clear Hex Mambo have to make a stand here. Giving this up means you're essentially losing a second Phoenix, or maybe even a third if played properly. And the Bolts are already stepping up to get ready.
Hex Mambo very far back. The Bolts walking directly up to Deathwalker, walled away. But the Intoxicate is going to do some decent damage, but so much thrown right back to Deathwalker. Echrome gone, and Trixtank counting his blessings. Then nobody else can chase him over the wall, but keep your eyes on Dzoni, still running from the backside of the fight. Zyrhoes stunned out by LASBRA. Zyrhoes chopped away. That's 3 down on Hex Mambo. Dzoni trying to find his way back into the fight, but it's just him and Trixtank to defend the Bolts. They're gonna go for the Titan instead. They're not going to let this game play out any longer. Trixtank finds the stun on only one, but where is Dzoni? Sonic Booming on a BaRRA, uses the beat, but Johnny's health bar is falling fast, and so is the Titan. The Olympus Bolts will strike for game 1.
I said that the Olympus Bolts had a plan. We saw the God picks, we saw the picks and bans, and it was clear. They knew exactly what Hex Mambo was gonna do, and they had answers for it. This double hunter composition, plenty of damage coming from Venenu. I think LASBRA had tremendous dive as well, and Baskin seemed nigh unstoppable. The Olympus Bolts did their homework and they executed.
Man, this Chiron from Venenu is something we haven't seen in so long from him. It feels like it's been over half a year since he's brought this out consistently, but it feels like it hasn't skipped a beat yet, Tro. It feels like it was right on point. The snipes were hitting almost every single time, 2 to 3 people every single time that ult goes through. If I'm Hex Mambo, I might be looking at Venenu next game.
And if I'm Hex Mambo, I'm thinking we need to get something started a bit earlier. I mean, you could tell they're like, we're fine. We'll just play for late game. We'll just play for late game. Late game didn't come. This game ended pre-30 minutes. They're going to need to bring a little bit more early damage next time.
Yeah, definitely not going to get to late game when it's ending at 25 minutes. Hex Mambo started things out, but the Olympus Bolts are going to be the ones to claim game number 1. Can the Bolts keep up this momentum in game 2? We'll find out right after this break.
is a 1-0 start for the Olympus Bolts here in match number 2. Of course, the Bolts fans going crazy when they saw them win. And of course, I have to give a little bit of credit here on the desk because yeah, there we go. Finally, some people getting into it. They need your energy now more than ever. Same thing goes for anyone out there rooting for Hex Mambo now more than ever. Not as many as the Bolts fans, as it turns out over there.
Not much to celebrate.
Not yet, but we were talking earlier about their propensity to turn sets around. We'll see if that holds true. A lot of fantastic things that happen that set. Of course, a lot of fantastic things that can happen for those of you watching, whether you're in venue or at home. If you want to join in, you can actually get in on a fantastic PC giveaway from Alienware. You know, we mention all the time that the pros are playing on the Aurora Ryzen R10 desktops. So why not get something a little better? The Aurora R14 desktop, a giveaway that you can enter now. Of course, if you're in chat, I'm sure there's a command for it that you can go ahead and go for. More than likely been tweeted out if you're here in venue. You definitely can go to twitter.com/SMITEPro to try and find that one. Get in on a fantastic machine, all pre-built, all for you. Something that is capable of streaming, gaming, anything, well, pretty much anything you can think about. As long as it's within the parameters of what a computer can do, then you are going to be able to rock that. And you could maybe look like Vin or Baskin did there in game number 1. Venenu stands out to me, 6-0-3 towards the end of that game. But I have to give Baskin maybe the biggest shout out. Rotations. I say early. Let's just go ahead and point out when I say early, it's 15 minutes into the game when kills started to happen.
So early.
Yeah, it felt early.
00-11. I mean, 11 assists, perfect slash line otherwise. As far as front lines go, Hurry Baskin was absolutely leading and heralding his team to victory.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some informed Baskin this tournament, which should be exciting for everybody to see Baskin really playing to his best. The Artio pick was a little surprising for me, but it looked fantastic that set. It was definitely something he was planning to play in preparation against that Amaterasu when he anticipated Deathwalker to pick it, and it definitely looked really deadly into pretty much all of the picks. That cripple field being great for setting up early kills on those early rotations for his team pretty reliably.
I mean, just so often, and you know, Vin, credit where credit's due. When was the last time we saw Chiron, and why was anyone playing it? It's just been so long as far as hunters go, and Mifflin did not slow him down, did not stop him this time around.
Yeah, that was the concern, I think, for Zyrhoes out of mid was, can he keep pace with the Chiron? Not many mages can. Tiamat certainly couldn't. And this was a composition from the Olympus Bolts with pressure that would just continually win. We called it at the top of the game. Start with a lead, continue with the lead. The Olympus Bolts win harder. I think the only speed bump was the objective steal. Right. If one tick of Tornado doesn't take away Pyromancer, we might shave 4 minutes off that game.
Which, when you're locking in things like the Mercury and the Tiamat, maybe are the last thing that you want. You know, Mifflin, actually, even going into it, I almost forgot about this. You know, you were talking up the Bacchus. Specifically as a late game, I'm going to give you the credit. You said 50 minutes in.
Didn't get there.
As one of the best. We got about halfway there. And unfortunately, Vermi fell a little flat. I also noticed you got a little snack.
Yeah, man. I lined up like for 15 minutes to get this turkey leg.
Yeah.
And I was like, this bit's going to be amazing, right? Like, I'm going to eat a turkey leg on the desk, Bacchus, you know, like we were going to do the whole thing. Instead now, the bit's gone and it's a cold turkey leg. Like, what's the point?
2 losses.
Well,
major L's.
You were really on, like, when you took like 3 or 4 bites out of it, you were really excited about it.
Yeah, and Hindu told me to stop eating it or it wouldn't be like a good bit. It would just be a bone.
It would just be a bone. You know what? You need to throw them a bone right now. They need something to latch onto if you're Hex Mambo. I'm really proud of that one, and I wish that nobody, okay.
Honestly, I was kind of thinking the same bit. I was like, maybe I could incorporate that. My brain wasn't fast enough. Yours was. So we'll take it.
We'll take it. You're too busy predicting things like the Amaterasu that came through,
so
prepared for the picks and bans. And that's really the thing right now. I think, and you can kind of see it, a lot of concentration from Hex Mambo. We had talked about this, Harry, and you had mentioned it, but the EU team specifically and their ability from game 1 to just go, okay, cool, here's what went wrong, here's how we fix it, let's go to game 2.
And I'm going to kind of highlight a couple of things that I personally believe went wrong that I think they're probably going to be talking about. I think the Ymir was a huge problem for them, not only in early aggression, but for just pushing that lead. Once they had a lead and they grouped around objectives, it was really easy to catch people out with those walls late game once they felt strong. And then I think they also just need to be talking about maybe drafting a little bit less for the late game, or maybe just coming up with a better plan for surviving the early game. Just too many late game picks, I think, here. The Tiamat just needed too much time to ramp up. The Amma needed too much time to ramp up. And also they had a really solid plan for that Amaterasu. So they've got a lot of problems they kind of need to address here. There were a lot of things going wrong, obviously, a game that ended early. So let's see how they adjust.
Well, good news for Hex Mambo. We move into picks and bans for game number 2. And they are going to be your first pick team. Bolts maybe preferring this position, considering what we've seen in the past, a lot of second pick teams being able to dominate. Hades immediately taken off the board, something we've seen Baskin run a lot. And Mifflin, we had this happen earlier when we got into game 2. We were talking about Kings and Ravens. There's not much of a reason for the Bolts to really change anything right here. They go for the Fafnir. I wouldn't be surprised if the next 2 are maybe targeted at Dzoni, and then you just kind of coast through the picks and bans.
Yeah, run it back. Don't put yourself in a position where you need to change. Have your enemies do it to you. If they're willing to run back a game that went so handily one way or the other, oh man.
Yeah.
I was so ready to go into the whole
the
spiel.
WoW would have like queued you in a little
no,
sooner.
it did. I looked. Okay,
Giving
so
you
we're changing some stuff up here. Ymir has the ban out. Maybe concern the Mambo ticket for themselves in first slot.
I think so.
Would leave you in a position where you're not feeling so great about locking in things like the Ishtar. But what does that leave available with Hebo banned out too? That's a lot of respect towards Dzoni. Maybe Mambo try and emphasize, at least, maybe not here in first pick, but in top 3, get Zyrhoes something he's comfortable on. Because that is so important. The Baba Yaga has looked really good for him. The Chronos maybe not putting up the most player damage, but when you're averaging like 30,000 structure damage in a game, I feel like you're willing to overlook a little bit of that player damage. I think we're definitely keeping our eyes on Zyrhoes' pick. But in first slot, you might just take the Ishtar just because it's strong.
Yeah, notably Ishtar, Cernunnos open, Amaterasu's open if they're willing to go back to that. Especially with the Ymir gone, I think that might be something they're a little bit more confident in. Depends on how shaken Deathwalker is, especially after that last game wasn't the best. Ishtar, I think, is always a safe choice.
Yeah.
Just probably the best hunter in the game, in a lot of people's opinions.
Yep.
The Bolts, notably last game, were happy to give that away too and went towards the Chronos, so I expect them to go back towards that as well here, now in their second slot.
A lot of pressure on Deathwalker right there. You can see him on the screen. Having to turn things around. Has one of the, I believe, one of the nominees for Esports Play of the Year as well, for the Golden Bolts. So like you have to imagine like trying to carry that weight into a set where one more loss means you are out of the championship. Hurry. You had mentioned the Cernunnos gets locked in alongside the Amaterasu. So all of the things that we saw the Bolts do to handle that, you almost need out of Hex Mambo to try and control it.
Right, and the Mambo, the Hex Mambo here are going to go for the Chulainn. That is actually a pick that they played versus us in the qualifiers into Amaterasu. It's his favorite pick into Amaterasu so far that I can tell. And then Zyrhoes, like Mifflin suggested, is going to go ahead and take his pick top 3. Maybe we're not the most happy with the Chronos pick versus something like the Baba Yaga, but definitely going to be a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more active in the early game compared to the Tiamat.
I think after seeing how much he's played it over the last like 2-3 phases this year, I feel like, yeah, no, it's just a very comfortable pick. Mifflin, how do you feel about Mambo's top 3?
I mean, Ishtar, Chulainn, let's talk about that. Awesome, great. Your dual lane's got pressure, your solo lane holds its own. I'll echo some of the sentiment that we got from Hurry. I maybe would have just blanket statement would have preferred to see the Baba Yaga considering the nature of how they had lost game 1. It was a pacing issue. Chronos is only going to expand on that issue. It is unlikely that this Chronos gets involved in a team fight before he's 4-slotted in the build. It's going to take a whole lot of time. So often during the play-in tournament, Hex Mambo was essentially 4v5 for the first 15, 20 minutes. Damage output, just not the name of the game there. That means you have to play through your side lanes. You need to generate pressure. You have to control where the Bolts are allowed to play so you can create space for this Chronos. As of now, you've got 2 side lanes that I think you could choose to play through depending on the support lock-in for Mambo. Ishtar, of course, one of the strongest hunters in the game. Chulainn, very powerful in his own right, but whether or not you're able to really bully out Amaterasu on the other side, I think that's going to be a bit of a question mark going forward. So we're leaning in on the duo lane here for Mambo.
Well, something TBD for the support role. And look, when you affect 9 of your team's kills, you go 6-0-3. Venenu, happy to go back to the Chiron. And locks it in cleanly for the Bolts. They start banning things out of Wheelish. Taken away from the jungle. Dzoni, still a threat to be reckoned with. Maui does finally show up on the screen, but he's banned out by Hex Mambo. There's the Mercury ban as well, so no matter what, Johnny's going to have to make some sort of change. And Mifflin, you had kind of wanted to see them shimmy towards something a little earlier anyway, at least to have some pressure. It feels like getting rid of the Mercury almost helps Hex Mambo a little bit.
It could. You definitely want something to get involved. I talk about bridge picks. When you've got late game scalers on your team, you need something to act as a bridge to that late game. Things like Thor come to mind, these high pressure picks, or Osiris mannequins, or Pele's out of the jungle. When we see Mambo go towards pressure in the early, I think maybe one of the earliest picks we've seen out of the jungle is Hunbots. Not exactly a bridge pick, but one that I think could help out in some of those team fights. If the Olympus Bolts are going to all in on aggression, we saw 15, 14-minute tower dives. Fear no evil, buys you space, it buys you time, and could potentially turn around an entire fight.
We see the dodge E-band out as well, trying to control a little bit of LASBRA there. Athena gets locked in, Hurry. We've been seeing a lot more of Athena over the last couple of months, like just slowly but surely trying to find her way back in there. The Bolts are feeling confident with it.
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a guess here and say this Athena is probably going to be jungle.
You're feeling it.
Wow.
Because as we stand, we're at 3 Fizz for the Bolts. They need magical damage somewhere. They probably don't want it to be just there for their support. It seems to be the consensus for teams these days. You can't just run 4 Fizz. It's too easy to punish. So I think, and LASBRA, I've seen him play this character a lot in ranked, and he's kind of pulled it out here and there, so that's what I'd expect.
You do know, Cherio's coaching the Dragons, though, right? Like,
True.
It feels like, I mean, it's European, so maybe there's definitely a link.
Fenrir.
I'm excited to see that. Terra locked in, which is European. Fenrir, Mifflin, you seem really excited about it.
I mean, it's an early game pick. It's everything I asked for. You've got CC output, you've got damage throughout the early. You can be that bridge pick. You've got some decent targets on the Bolts. Namely, I think Cern really struggles. If it is Athena out of the jungle, struggles doubly so. That taunt would have been great to have on your support, someone that could just deal with Brutalize consistently. But Ares does the exact same thing. Nail a chain. Hurry. Glad you're here. I'd have never guessed this Athena going to the jungle, man. This is a high execution composition, as Athena jungle really always is. Playing around your ultimate or trusting your teammates to make sure you're landing your ultimate. Not an easy position to put yourself in. I'm not even certain that you're looking anywhere in particular as is Athena to apply your pressure. It's more so alleviating pressure on map with Defender of Olympus. But if you're rushing Polynomicon early, as Athena jungles tend to do, boost that burst a little bit, all of a sudden rewind starts to look a little bit worse. This Chronos could be under threat.
We get Ares at the very end. Again, not a god. If I'm preparing things coming into this, not a god. It was at the forefront of my mind, but Hurry, given the team that's on the other side, first off, not only Jake being able to run it, but seeing the Fenrir on the other side, it feels like this is maybe one of the perfect times to pick up the Ares.
I think it pairs really well with this other Guardian and Athena as well, because she can always just set up the chains. That is really pivotal part of the Ares kit to make sure that you're hitting. And having another Guardian to set up for you to hit your abilities is really important. And this is a pick that we've seen Jake go to before. I think it's actually an early game pick as well, because it has really good jungle clear, has really good lane clear. And I think that kind of goes with what the Bolts are trying to do with their game plan too. So I think, honestly, the way the Bolts have crafted the end of their draft here looks really good.
Well, Hex Mambo in a position right now, down 0-1, need to win a game if they want to continue any sort of world championship run. The other side of this, the Bolts up 1-0. They lock in the Ares, they lock in Athena jungle to try and close out their quarterfinals, stamp themselves a trip to the semifinals. We'll see if they can do it here in game number 2 as we go back to J-Mac and Trelly.
Thank you so much, Gore and the desk. Athena jungle, Trelly, in the second game of our set. The Olympus Bolts to try and close this one out and knock not just the first SCC from our beginning set, but knock out both of the European contenders and try to go towards the semifinals. Tell me a little bit about this Ares pick, man. We saw the Ymir come out last game. It was great. These walls to block off paths. How is this Ares really going to facilitate this Bolt squad?
I think this Ares is going to bring lane dominance. You're up against the Terra. Every time she wants to dash through her rock, you're no longer able to do that. We're going to cripple you out. You're going to use these chains continuously, even up against Dzoni on the Fenrir. Brutalize, not going to be fully casted whenever Awesome Jake, or in this case, even LASBRA are around. It's going to be difficult to get value out of that Brutalize. However, you can still use Ragnarok for that CC immunity, try and find some picks. I'm just amazed that to go to the semifinals, LASBRA pulls out Athena jungle. I'm excited to see it.
It's going to be crazy game number 2 between the Olympus Bolts and Hex Mambo. Hex have got to make something work in game 2 and pry their way in towards a game 3 to try and to go for the semifinals. Can they do it in this matchup here? It all comes down to Hex Mambo. But this is a team, Trey, that has gone on history, especially with a player like Deathwalker, who has talked about, we take game number 1 to download the enemy. We kind of lose out in the first, and then we sweep the rest of the way through.
That is true. Last time we interviewed him, he said, yeah, game 1, we download them. Game 2, that's when we start trying. And that, I guess they have an opportunity to do so, because the Ares is a pick that falls off hard. The Olympus Bolts, they had a very simple strategy last game, and it was win before 30 minutes, and they did that. If they do it again, this Ares will not have a problem. If we do get late game, there is a bit of fall off to that Ares. The ultimate loses a bit of value, that sort of thing. So Hex Mambo knows this. They knew they needed a little bit more early pressure. They brought the Fenrir to the party. And also Zyrhoes back to the Chronos, a pick that I've gone on record to say that I haven't liked one single time. However, it kills towers. And when you're winning, you do need towers dead. Now, the problem is, Hex Mambo hasn't been winning yet this set.
No, it has been a single kill so far for Hex Mambo this set. We'll see if they can add a few more to those here in game number 2. And a lot of this all started up last time around the duo lane. Trixtank was playing very aggressive on this Bacchus when given an opportunity, but LASBRA making some great punishes early on. Now we'll be able to get to these fights even faster. That defender of Olympus really going to allow him to jump in and really make these obscure team fights and really make it so much more one-sided for whichever fighting lane he goes to.
Yeah, and I'm surprised that LASBRA is going to go for the bead start. I guess you're up against a Fenrir, so you have to, but you'd think wants to get active in the early, right? Wants to get that blink online, that blink on, but too scared of Dzoni on the Fenrir. Does not want to be pulled underneath the tower early on, does not want to have to save that ultimate for your only form of CC immunity. Or as you can see, all of Hex Mambo going in for the beats. They're respecting what the amount of CC they have and the amount of lockdown that could be coming their way. Not surprised that Trixtank is getting out pressured here, was able to grab the interceptor.
Yeah, with a punch. A single punch from a Terra does like 16 damage, and he stole that away.
I mean, she be hitting though. She's got those fists, and it was enough to be able to grab that early pressure. However, Terra is not a real character until level 3. I mean, you need all of your abilities to even get a semblance of lane clear, which Trixtank does not have. So even more power to him that he was able to grab that interceptor. It's going to help out with some HP 5 and maybe help him get aggressive a little bit longer here up against BaRRaCCuDDa.
And Trixtank caught in a weird spot for himself, but was able to get back once the chains faded away from Awesome Jake. Still not quite level 3 for the support, but Echrome has hit 3. Full access to the Ishtar kit now. And I think anytime we pan to this mid lane, if we see Zyrhoes any further than like the halfway point of the lane, it might be surprising if there's even a semblance of health removed from Venenu. We're questioning who came over to the lane to really help him out there. Because I don't imagine, from just based on history of what we've seen with Zyrhoes, that he is looking to fight anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, even in this case, last game, Ben was doing the same thing on the Chiron, walking up to the red buff saying, oh, you're a Chronos trying to solo your red buff? No, you're not. I'm going to step up and try and steal it from you. And there's really nothing Zyrhoes can do about that. He does not have the fight back or the burst to try and contend with Ben until Dzoni comes over. After that, then sure, your red buff goes down for free. I do want to zoom in on the solo lane. Deathwalker goes down game number 1 on his Amaterasu, which he plays a ton and has lots of confidence on. This time goes over to the Chulainn, a pick that he does like to go to up against the Ama. Gets good pressure, can brawl, but doesn't have that same access to free farm. You really do count on the invade, but here comes LASBRA.
LASBRA crashes down. Trixtank taunted back. Beads are just enough to get him out, and a monolith drop as well. Means that Trixtank will be able to squeak out of this team fight. And where will be the answer from Dzoni? He's rotated over towards mid, but Venenu's nowhere in the area. The Olympus Bolts able to strip away a very important relic off the support of the Mambo.
Yeah, losing beads is not great. You have to watch out from the no escape. Awesome Jake wants to try and find tricks later on level 5 possibly, if some more DPS comes through. However, was just sitting level 3, so level 5 is going to be a ways away. Trixtank should have some time to try and stay away from this Ares, especially with no blink available on this Ares pick. But we already see tons of aggression here from LASBRA. We were wondering where that defender of Olympus would go. Turns out duo lane, pretty good chase to put it. And getting a relic from Trixtank early on means they have to play even safer.
Man, you can see the gears turning on both supports whenever that monolith comes down. Trixtank taking a couple of back steps every time he steps forward. Like, am I really going to get a chance to dash? Jake wondering if maybe I should throw a chain out there, but didn't see in that case. BaRRaCCuDDa will be just fine in the duo lane for now. Does get mezzed out by Echrome, but level 5, at least for the Hunter of Hex Mambo, could maybe start a fight, but no sign of the junglers anywhere nearby. LASBRA's ultimate's still on cooldown for a little while. Might not see any sparks in the duo lane until this level 5 comes from Jake, but doesn't seem he's interested in the fight, Trelly.
Yeah, not yet. That Indra Scepter is what Awesome Jake has his eyes on. You got to keep your eye on the diamond of LASBRA. Once that ultimate is available, this duo lane fight could get ugly real fast. Trixtank has no beats for 70 seconds. And pretty sure if that no escape comes through, LASBRA's on the way. I mean, you want to be there for that first blood, and that Defender of Olympus will pretty much guarantee it if the chains are connecting. You have a decent opportunity to look towards Baskin, though. I mean, with the Golden Blade start, not a lot of protections on this solo lane, and the Ama could be somewhere Dzoni looks to get aggressive, but hasn't just yet. Sort of sitting around the blue buff, maybe able to find Baskin here. Needs the leap onto the ult, but Baskin sniffs this one out.
And maybe just in time, Deathwalker had actually just transformed the moment that Baskin dashed away. It could have been dangerous for the solo of the Bolts. So if you're Dzoni in this position, is this solo lane your best option to try and get pressure, try and knock down Baskin, maybe put him in an uncomfortable spot himself? We see a jump in by Deathwalker and Dzoni. Beads gone from the Fenrirs, a 4-man grouping by the Bolts to try and steal away this Scorpion.
Yeah, you can tell the Bolts are playing with no fear. I mean, they walk up to just about everything and then say, oh, Mambo's kind of here. Yeah, we're going to steal away the Scorpion. We're going to attempt to. We're going to attempt to steal away pretty much everything because there hasn't been an answer back. Pulling the beads off of Dzoni means that his engage gets so much more difficult. I mean, if you don't have fully channeled Brutalize onto these tankier targets, you're not finding a kill, especially with Zyrhoes on the Chronos. This pick's not going to be online for quite some time. Trixtank, though, is finding him a bit of a scrap here. Wants to try and go for the steal as well.
He did it again.
And he got it.
He's insane. Well, another Terra game that we've seen multiple steals. Beads baited by BaRRaCCuDDa. The Ragnarok picks him up, and Hex Mambo and Dzoni strike first blood.
Barra, you cannot panic on the world stage. You gotta let that fight connect, and in this case, those beads are gone. Beautiful kill there for Dzoni. It just takes one false bite, and that's gonna be it. Now Echrome got some extra pressure in lane. That purple buff is about to spawn back in, but Awesome Jake, as a good support, already comes to cover these minions, and here comes LASBRA as well. They're not letting this Cern get even more far behind.
Yeah, Jake will be at least giving a little bit of backup, and now LASBRA heading over to the Oracles. Zero starts them out and finishes them. Thanks to the help of LASBRA for picking those ones for him. Echrome will be able to dash away, and Hex Mambo have now established themselves a lead in this game. Charlie, sitting about 1,300 gold. I mean, First Blood Bounty covers about a third of that, but the rest of it just feels like it's maybe been off the back of Trixtank on these steals.
Yeah, it could be off the back of Trixtank. Deathwalker does have about half a level lead over Baskin. Just did tick through, but it is going to start to add up. I mean, there's plenty of farm to be had on this map. You just got to make sure that you're able to find it. With the teleport, though, Baskin should slowly but surely catch up and actually pass him, just by nature of being able to go to wave exclusively, whereas Baskin, or in this case, Deathwalker has to walk the whole way. You know, this Chulainn really does take a while to start clearing. And once that Soul Eater gets online, you get some more pressure. And as you said, that gold will start to add up if Mambo continue this pace. Good damage here, and the ultimate coming out of Awesome Jake, but he's the target in this fight.
Trixtank won't even use the beads from the no escape. It's a wraparound from Baskin. Beads are gonna have to be used for Trix this time. He'll get away, but not from the damage output. Dzoni goes up, grabs Baskin, yanks him into the tower. This should be a turnaround for Hex Mambo, and with Deathwalker showing up, it's a 1-for-1 trade. Hex Mambo able to trade out their support for the solo.
Yeah, not enough rage, though. You could tell Deathwalker wanted to chase that fight down, but he was not angry enough, and that means he can't chase down the rest of the Bolts. Still a good engagement, though. Hex Mambo able to find the trade as LASBRA makes the rotation over Echrome. Maybe trying to pull some beads, but definitely looking for that Indra Scepter, trying to take it away from this Ishtar. It's definitely going to help BaRRaCCuDDa try and find some boxing back. You don't want to let anyone with either of these picks, the Cernunnos or the Ishtar, take a lead and run with it. I mean, ADCs are so strong in the current meta, especially with just a little bit of a lead. Good rotation in, though, from both of the solo laners. I mean, Baskin comes up huge there for the Bolts, and that's the reason you get this Golden Blade. I mean, you can clear the wave and rotate out so effectively.
And Charlie, if there's one thing I've learned about the EU Hunters, is that these are one of the only roles and one of the only groups of players that actually love to play so aggressive in the early game. I mean, these guys are boxing the moment their supports walk out of lane. They want that opportunity to fight. So the fact that BaRRaCCuDDa is keeping Echrome so passive in this lane, I say that, but maybe a fight from BaRRaCCuDDa. Echrome steps up, sees the Harpies there, but knows they're getting pulled by Barra just because that Scepter. Echrome not going to fall for the bait this time around.
Yeah, he saw a little shocking coming from over the wall and said, I think there's a BaRRaCCuDDa hiding in these waters. But Awesome Jake misses the chain, a little bit of poke coming his way, forced it at the ultimate. Where's LASBRA though? He does have the ultimate, he could join this.
Echrome pulls out the swords and goes back onto Jake instead, but Jake will be fine. Half HP.
There he is.
LASBRA on the way, defender of Olympus, but so comes Dzoni. But once he sees that LASBRA is there, it is just a full retreat from both the squads. Bolts not wanting to fight into this Ragnarok ultimate, and Dzoni not wanting to fight into the fear of what LASBRA can turn around with.
I mean, one of the benefits of getting the early kill, I say that, but here comes Dzoni, jumps in, misses the stun off the Unchained, and immediately he just turns tail and runs. He does not want to get caught out. LASBRA finds the taunt, but not going to get the beats. Dzoni knows better. He knows the rest of the team can't close gap like that. Holding onto the relic, a smart call. And Mambo still going to be pulling ahead about 2K gold 10 minutes into this game. I was going to say, though, one of the benefits of giving a kill to Chronos early on, Zyrhoes is able to double stack and not feel bad about it. Warlock staff just finished up. Book of Thoth still stacking. He's got not a care in the world. He's able to continue farming. Last time Awesome Jake went for this play, he didn't have LASBRA. This time LASBRA's here.
LASBRA, no ultimate. Gonna take a sec for him to get to Trixtank. Bead still down for 5 more seconds on Trix. And I wonder if the Bolts had timer on that relic at that point. Maybe that's why they didn't initially go for it, thinking maybe that the beads were still available, or back and available, I should say, for Trixtank. So, gonna back off for the time being as Dzoni will rotate over towards the opposite side of the map. And I was thinking maybe earlier on we would see pressure thrown at Baskin and Deathwalker by the 2 junglers, try and get things at least active on one side, but seems like it's been all dual lane, Trelly.
Yeah, I mean, dual lane is going to be the tide turner in this matchup, especially if either one gets off to a good lead. BaRRA getting picked early on does hurt, but he's been able to stay pretty far up, and also, as you said, stay aggressive. I mean, he's not training down for some fights. He's sitting around corners saying, hey, if I catch you with a Bramble Blast, I'm dashing in. Like, I want this fight despite falling down early. I do expect Deathwalker and Baskin, respectively, to make some key rotations towards these objectives, but the Fury has not been pulled, and Pyromancer has not been looked at. We have been exclusively fighting on the left side of the map. There is still some level differentials, though. Dzoni consistently able to find some good farm. Looks like LASBRA just ticks over to level 11. Once you get access to that second relic, Blink Athena can be potent, but Pyromancer finally started back up, and it looks like Trix just trying to zone this Athena.
LASBRA tries to throw a reach over the wall, but LASBRA will beads a little bit early again. Dzoni is too good at baiting this one singular relic, and another kill for the jungler of Hex Mambo. Baskin rotates in, and we'll be just fine for now.
You can just get bit. You can beads later. It's not that big of a deal, but it seems like BaRRA and LASBRA a little trigger happy on those relics, and Dzoni, he's just missing. That's all you do. You bite next to them, not quite pick them up, and you can bait out that relic. That's 2 kills. Some great play here from the jungler of Hex Mambo. That gold lead's going to continue to climb. Pyromancer goes down. You got to assume they want to keep on going.
He's in their heads, man. Dzoni is dialed in onto the enemy team, has worked his way into their mind and said, you know what? You're just going to beads right here and right now.
Yep, and that's the call. I mean, Hex Mambo is sitting fine. No more objectives on the map for the time being. So they're going to continue to play their brand of Smite. They know when the relics are down. They know that LASBRA cannot get aggressive for the next 2 minutes. So they don't have to worry about this Athena. Not too much damage online either. I mean, the Book of Thoth is there, but you want to get it stacked up. You want access to that extra flat 10. This Athena has the ability to get across the map in an instant, but without a relic, without that beads, you could just be ulting your death.
Some of that extra gold in hand off the Fury pick by Hex Mambo gives them just a little over a 2,000 gold lead, maybe sitting close to 2,500. BaRRA and Jake will answer by taking down a tier 1 tower on the left side of the map. And no answer back from Mambo this time around. Dzoni sitting in the right jungle. We saw a hint of a rotation from Zyrhoes and Trixtank, but maybe thinking it's too little too late at that point. Instead, we see them rotate back over towards mid. Level 14 on the Chronos, working on those Warlock staff stacks at this point. Polynomicon after. Dzoni picks up LASBRA, drops him into the waiting arms of Zyrhoes, and there's nowhere for the jungler to go. Killing spree for the Fenrir. Dzoni is going crazy, and Baskin might not even make it out of this fight as Deathwalker puts him in the dirt.
Yeah, and it looks like Zyrhoes wants a little bit more, finding some good poke on the Ven, but not going to dive this tier 1 tower. If Echrome's over here, I wouldn't be surprised if these maniacs went for Fire Giant, but it looks like that's not the call. They want some more farm. You better at least stack up that Warlocks before you're looking to make plays like that. But Dzoni, he knew exactly when those beads were up, had to expend the blink to close some gap, but still able to find that Athena. LASBRA goes down 0-2. This is a fantastic start, about as good as you can get for an early game Fenrir. 3-0, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, 3-0-2, a part of all 5 kills for his team. Maybe a fight on the left side of the map. Echrome dashes away. Ult from BaRRaCCuDDa gets immune for 1 instance, but Echrome in danger. Age is gone, Beads not available. Echrome somehow, though, still alive through all this. Will get pulled back in by Jake, but he's not dead until Baskin makes the rotation in to close out a kill for the Olympus Bolts. Doubling up their kills now, but not much more they can do. A good stun by Trix will save his lone life.
I mean, that is the second massive teleport I've seen out of Baskin. He is putting so much gold into upgrading that teleport early on, making sure he can go to these wards, and once he does, he shows up big for his team. First time on the Artio, this time on the Amaterasu. I don't think they return that kill if Baskin doesn't show up, but both relics are used in that fight, so probably got to play a little bit safer for the time being. Dzoni's not going to have blink for another 40, so no more aggression from Mambo either. No objectives to be looked at. That Pyromancer dropped and the Fury right after, so it looks like just farming. BaRRaCCuDDa and Awesome Jake have been consistently pushing in this left side of the map. When you have to go over and clear left, you can look for things on the opposite side.
So Wit still. A little bit of time before Pyro comes back up, about another minute or so, minute 15. Till we see that respawn. Gold's going to be down for a little bit longer than that. It's slightly staggered respawns for the 2 neutral objectives. And look at Dzoni, man. He is roaming through enemy territory, level 15 on the Fenrir, trying to close in the gap to Venenu, but a quick dash away with that giddy up. Venenu's got a lot of safety on this Chiron pick. He's been very good about getting out of the danger from Trixtank.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that Hex Mambo has been intentionally avoiding Ven. They don't want that cleanse to ruin their picks with the Ragnarok. One fight near Ven, and you're not getting beads. You're getting training exercise now. It's not going to help you. You need to be able to pull those beads. So wherever Ven isn't, that's where we should expect to see Dzoni be getting active. At the moment, there's no real beads you can capitalize off of unless you're looking for BaRRaCCuDDa, but he is intentionally staying underneath that tier 1 tower, almost at the tier 2 for how far back this Cernunnos is playing. That means Pyromancer should go the way of Mambo, barring a steal. They're able to play this far up because they're not worried about BaRRaCCuDDa rotating.
Deathwalker still roaming through the jungle. Trixtank will find a route onto Jake, but not much more beyond there for now. Instead, it's a pull by Dzoni and Trix that steal away the Greater Scorpion yet again. And this is where it feels we've been seeing a lot of this gold trickle down for Hex Mambo, starting up the Pyro. Baskin is here, but not quite enough damage to steal that one away. Hex Mambo banking on the fact they're going to get one, but a pull to the Fire Giant. The Hunters for Bolts are on the opposite side of the map. But Hex Mambo will pull away. Awesome Jake goes to the ult, and as soon as he gets out, he's picked up by the Wolf, dropped right down into Dzoni's hands. 4 in a row for the jungler of Hex Mambo. But a dive in by the rest of the squad as Dzoni is too low in HP to keep the fight up.
Yeah, and that's going to be the end of it. BaRRa and Ven drop the Primal Fury, and BaRRa has decided to push the left side of the map. Ven makes a clutch rotation over. That could have been still a Fire Giant pull after the pick on Awesome Jake, but too much damage was answered back. Dzoni lives by a sliver of HP. I really thought Masterful Shot might have been able to clean it up, but he didn't go for the Heartseeker this time around. He went for the Titan's Bane, so didn't have that extra burst of damage. BaRRaCCuDDa wasn't able to grab that tier 2 either, so good farm, but Primal Fury, probably the next target here for Mambo. They did show that they're down to pull a Fire Giant, though. That's a crazy call, and BaRRaCCuDDa's nearby.
Turn around, BaRRa. Primal Fury started. Can BaRRaCCuDDa steal away? Ultimate will get the leash, but Primal Fury will be picked back up by Mambo. BaRRa's got one shot to take this away, but Dzoni will completely thwart that plan. Hex Mambo grab the Primal Fury and an extra pick on top. Maybe one on a Baskin, who's got his eyes on Trixtank, will take him down. But Dzoni is back in the fight. Brutalized on top of a double taunt from LASBRA. Will turn it around. Dzoni is gone. Venenu, credit to the kill this time. And now Echrome and Zyrhoes by themselves. Echrome dropped. It's another one for LASBRA. But here comes Deathwalker to the back line. Immediate Aegis by Ven. Deathwalker will walk him down with Zyrhoes and Hex Mambo take a 3 for 2.
What a turn. It does look like Deathwalker's done with this chase. He wants to find Awesome Jake. He doesn't have the damage, though, and Zyrhoes has split off. He's trying to hide to see if he can find the pick on the Ven, but he's not a taunt. Does he have the damage? Good Aegis.
He's still alive for a moment, but not much longer. Baskin puts down the mid laner of Hex Mambo and answer with a 4 for 2 trade. Sure, they lost the Primal Fury, but talk about a turnaround set of kills for the Bolts.
Yeah, you want to talk about 2 clutch teleports. Out a third one, Baskin shows up insane for the Olympus Bolts. That should have been a handed fight going the way of Hex Mambo, and also extremely clutch taunt there from LASBRA. I think Baskin could have been chased down with a Hydra's auto if that Brutalize doesn't get canceled. But Hex Mambo's still in favor, about 3,000 gold, and it looks like they're grouping around the right side of the map. They know that the Olympus Bolts could go for a play here while Zyrhoes is down for another 15 seconds. But not at the moment. They're just grouping as Dzoni and Echrome have made their way to Fire Giant as well. Good ward vision. The Olympus Bolts know what they're looking for.
And even despite the blunder of a team fight from Hex Mambo, still holding on to a small 3,000 gold lead over the Bolts. Down but not out by any stretch in the imagination. And Hex Mambo are always a team like to rally together in these Game 2, Game 3 situations to really keep things interesting. And once we start seeing some more of these rotations out of Deathwalker out, I mean, you saw the impact that he had in that last fight.
Oh, yeah.
Once he joined back in, it felt like a second win coming for Hex Mambo.
And I would argue if Zyrhoes has one more item there, Baskin's dead, and maybe Ven takes a bit more damage. It's just not quite online. This Chronos is a ticking time bomb, no pun intended. He's got the damage, it just needs to get there. They need to get 5-6 more minutes. And I think Hex Mambo have it in their tank to stall this one out, but the Bolts have been finding good engagements. They've been able to push, and look at this, LASBRA on the left side of the map. He can join the fight whenever he wants. He's gonna go for this tier 2 tower.
BaRRaCCuDDa is on the way to the fight. Fire Giant pulled by Hex Mambo, but is it a bait to find a pick? Maybe one onto Baskin. But Dzoni, even after the stun, will pull back. Hex Mambo gonna regroup around the fire once more and carry Echrome, putting out some decent damage to slow burn this one, but maybe not the damage output that Hex is hoping for.
LASBRA keeps channeling that ult and then canceling, and he wants that tier 2, and Hex Mambo aren't doing anything about it. They're not making the Fire Giant call just yet. They want to try and find a pick. Haven't used any ultimates either. Step up, do Fire Giant. Who steps up? Maybe we go for Elite, reset. That's been the call. Dzoni gets knocked up by the Fire Giant. That's not a good start.
Half health on the fire. Is this the commit for Hex Mambo or the retreat? They are trying to get out, but Baskin is not going to make it easy.
Beautiful
LASBRA
wall.
blinks in to try and find Dzoni, and Dzoni is so low, but look at the lifesteal from that Seething Howl. He is nearly back up to 3/4.
I'm pretty sure Defender of Olympus and a Polyshot kills if Trix doesn't come in massive with those walls. Not gonna be able to close gap, but here comes the dash in.
Taunt in the backline again. Echrome now without an ult, still has Aegis. Venenu out, chain by Jake. Can't he even get a pullback? Nobody comes back this time around. Instead, it's Jake in the ground. Echrome comes up big for Mambo.
They find the pick, but still some low health bars. Deathwalker's gonna go off the base. And I don't think they have enough damage to make this pull convincingly, and the Olympus Bolts have not left either. LASBRA and Baskin sticking around. They want to make sure they've got eyes on this FG, but it's gonna be the full-on reset.
Hex Mambo still holding on to that same lead that's been going for the last almost 10 minutes of the game, Charlie. It seems they can't break past this plateau that they've built up just yet. The Olympus Bolts have been doing so good, especially Baskin, as you mentioned, with these teleports in to really keep these fights even for the Bolts. But Hex Mambo, once again, grouping around fire. Baskin and BaRRA are the only ones at the top side, but it's a wraparound from the bottom for LASBRA to try and find one of these picks. Fire Giant falling low. Hex Mambo are committing to the fire. They've got to burn one or the other because Echrome is gone. The fire is still active. Baskin will go to the back line, but Dzoni is gone. Echrome is gone, and so is Zyrhoes.
And they don't have anything. Trixtank is also getting run down, but here's Deathwalker. What kind of play can he make? I mean, Hex Mambo commits to the Fire Giant, and then Zyrhoes forced to rewind. That's your burst for the objective. And now the Olympus Bolts, they get to go for the pull.
It's the only fight that they needed to regain momentum. Olympus Bolts will get Fire Giant on 4. Deathwalker, the only man standing on Hex Mambo, not going to try and make the risky play to steal that one. Instead, he'll push out the left side of the map. That's just been batted away by the Bolts every single time that these fights have erupted on right. BaRRaCCuDDa, LASBRA, they've been sticking to the left and knocking these structures down.
Yeah, that's going to put the gold lead back in the Bolts' favor, but they're not done. They want to go for this tier 2 as well. That's all they have time for. Dzoni, Zyrhoes, and Trix will all be back up in 10 seconds. So essentially, the Bolts have made this game a little bit more in their favor and taken Fire Giant off the map. They've got plenty of time here, though. They can still go for the tier 1 and the tier 2 in mid. Hex Mambo are not out. They just need a little bit more farm. They need to hit level 20 on 3 different members of their team, in the next 3 minutes before the siege begins. I mean, upgraded starter items are absolutely massive, and this Oni Fury would certainly help. It doesn't look like the Bolts are poised to defend it. They're on the opposite side of the map, so they will be able to grab this one for free. An upgraded alternate timeline or even the Pendulum would help out Zyrhoes tremendously, and also Echrome feels like he just doesn't have that itemization online to shred through these tankier targets like Baskin.
Just now gets that kin size online after that team fight. Zyrhoes very close to hitting level 20, but not quite there. Did manage to pick up a Chiron's coin after that team fight. So now a little bit of pen to try and deal with some of these tankier targets. And it feels like Jake has been living for so long during these team fights. Typically when we see these no escapes go through, it's a full turn and burn from the teams to take out this Ares, but Jake's just had enough mitigation and enough HP to live through that initial burst.
He has been able to find some clutch pulls here for his team at the very least. Some good cripples. Dzoni hiding in the jungle, but looks like triple warded immediately. You get to see the crowd. They're hyping up Mambo. They want to see a defense here at the tier 2 tower. Can they get it though? Olympus Bolts are playing slow.
Dzoni by himself on the right. Zoned away by Baskin. Deathwalker to the left. In the jungle, a root in by Trixtank, but stopped immediately by the chain. LASBRA joins Baskin and dropping Dzoni. And we're now at a 5v4. Tier 2 tower will likely not stand for much longer as the double hunter of the Bolts are online and the tower is gone.
I want the Olympus Bolts sieging forward. They've got time. Beautiful beads pull there. Echrome, he's falling, he's gone!
Echrome is gone! That's 2 down, maybe make it 3 after as Zyrhoes falls. The Olympus Bolts, it was questionable for them. Could they stand up to the powerhouses of EU? But Hex Mambo could not dial in game number 2. The Olympus Bolts though, 5 strong, only the front line. This is gonna have to be a miracle defense by Trix and Deathwalker. They go in, Deathwalker gone. The Olympus Bolts find the D inside, and they're going to the semifinals to face off against the Kings.
They did not falter 1 second. The Olympus Bolts did not have an S key. They walked forward. They find Dzoni in the jungle, and they didn't stop. Was Ragnarok used? No. Was Rewind used? No. They didn't have a chance. The Olympus Bolts, in a fantastic composition, execute 2 26-minute games.
All it took was a couple of bite baits for Dzoni to get things rolling for Hex Mambo, but it feels like once the Bolts understood what he was doing, never fell for that problem yet again. And the Olympus Bolts are going to be moving on to the semifinals now to face off against another EU squad, but this time it's the #1 SPL Camelot Kings. But all credit to the Olympus Bolts, Minvertrelli. We dial back to the beginning of Phase 3 and really all throughout Phase 3. This is a shaky Olympus Bolts team. It really felt like it was even in question at one point if they would make it this far to the tournament. I think this is a pretty convincing argument for their fans that this is a new and reinvigorated Bolts squad.
And not only that, being able to win with such momentum carrying you into the semifinals, that's got to be a confidence booster here for the Bolts. They're a team that plays through emotion. They're feeling good. Their gameplay is going to be reflected by that.
The Olympus Bolts look great in this set. An early falter, but does not seem to have shaken them one bit. Able to come back off of a single team fight around that Fire Giant that was started by LASBRA. This Athena jungle that was maybe questioned initially, this is game 2. You guys are trying to go to the semis off of Athena jungle. Give it to him again. That was some of the best Athena jungle we've seen in a while, Trelli.
And I gotta say, Baskin showing an absolute masterclass of how to make rotations on the Amaterasu.
100%.
When his team needed him, he was behind. When the team needed him, he was ahead. He was making clutch plays on the Amaterasu. A pick that was very highly contested between both of these solo laners. You gotta be feeling good if you're a Bolts fan.
Bolts are going to be moving on to the semifinals to face off against the Camelot Kings. That'll take place tomorrow in a fantastic best-of-5 that you are not going to want to miss out. But that's it for me and Charlie. We're going to throw it to the desk to break it down.
Specifically speaking on that semifinal, Kings earlier say they would rather have the Bolts. They get their wish. The Bolts here. Look, I was, and I'm certain a lot of people in the crowd were feeling. Game 3 was like on the horizon, right? It was right there. And then just one big turnaround. Sometimes that's all you need. I mean, early on, you're seeing Baskin make these plays. He's going deep. You're still seeing some small turnarounds, but hurry. Eventually, it's going to work, right? If you just keep going with it, you get the taunts, you get the good plays, the dive from the Ama, and it all works out.
The Bolts definitely look like the veteran team there as we kind of approach the late game. Comp aside, they looked like they kind of knew what they wanted to do. Unfortunately, Mambo kind of dropped the ball a little bit. That one Fire Giant couldn't make up their minds. Ended up having to half reset the Fire Giant, put their carries in a bad spot, and then what looked like a very favorable game for them just turned on its head. And that really, I think, just goes to show that which team out of these two has been spending more time practicing, more time prepping this year for this World Championship.
And you got to hear it as well, like talking to them earlier, you heard it in the pregame interview, specifically with Baskin. Said, you know, we've been scrimming the top 4 teams. Like, I mean, if you're sitting here like, okay, you're avoiding the Kings because you know they're on your side of the bracket. And, you know, you're just playing against names like the Dragons, the Leviathans. Nobody big, right? Obviously, when you're playing against the top teams in the world, some favored for the championship still. It's a lot of good practice. They get to showcase that it does pay off here. Still shaky, though, Mifflin. I mean, early on in that game, admittedly, they do get the turnaround. Like you said, they show the veteranship. They hold on. But it took a while to get there, and it wasn't necessarily the cleanest path.
Look, it's Worlds. I think the narrative of clean play, worthless. There's only one
Good
thing.
point.
There's only one thing that these teams are interested in, and it's taking home the dub. And sure, the Olympus Bolts maybe struggle a little bit in the mid portion of that game. Who cares? Because individual performances stand up here. I mean, in particular, I had called him into question a couple of times in the initial death segment. The 408, I loved this Ares pick. The confidence to not only lock in the Ares, but also to perform on it to the level that he did, absolutely amazing. The entire team steps up big. The dual lane sure starts off 0-4 for the Olympus Bolts, but they don't end there, and they look incredibly strong stepping forward. I had said as well, when LASBRA looks good, the Bolts look good. Everybody looked good today. Everybody was dragging each other up, and it's a great place to find yourself on Worlds weekend.
And you have to imagine it feels good when you see the smiles break out the way that it did right there. And of course, if you want to represent the Bolts in game, or any of your favorite teams up there, you can celebrate your favorite SPL teams with the free skins that are included with Prime Gaming. You can claim now, whether it's the QR code or gaming.amazon.com/smite, or if you just happen to be on the website right now, there's a crown in the top left corner. There are a couple of icons up there. If you have the notifications, I like to clear them out, check out all the deals. If you want to do that right now, if you are a Prime Gaming member, all of that free for you, in-game content. You're going to be able to find that everywhere. And of course, you can see the Bolts worn on Thor. Maybe it wasn't Thor that game, but you have to imagine embodying the jungler of the Olympus Bolts who makes some massive plays for them to be able to win that game. Brings out the Athena in a crucial moment and is able to win with it. We're going to go to LASBRA on stage with Kelly right now.
Thank you so much, Gormeiser. Guys, give it up for LASBRA. So game number 1, a bit one-sided. What exactly was the key to your dominance in that game?
I mean, we had a lot of pressure in game 1, and we just kind of ran it down. We did a few mistakes early game, so we didn't get that big of a lead, but we knew we can win mid and late game, so.
Game number 2, obviously a little bit of a different story, but there seemed to be a big turning point during that Fire Giant fight. Walk me through what exactly happened and how you guys were able to take the lead.
We knew that DPS wasn't the highest yet, so we just played it kind of slow, and we have pretty good ways of getting in with Blinks and my ultimate, so we have very high damage and good burst for the backline, and I think Echrome didn't have beat, so he was just a target, and we got him, and I got out safely without getting bitten by Fenrir, while I didn't have beat, so.
Well, you're going up against the Camelot Kings tomorrow. How do you feel about that matchup?
Yeah, I usually feel pretty good playing into Kings. I would say usually it's down to the pick and bans in our set. Like it's very close games usually. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, LASBRA. Guys, give it up for LASBRA and the Bolts. And good luck tomorrow. And everyone, we're going to be taking a quick break, so don't go anywhere.
lack of skins and loot boxes and other cool things? Well, don't worry about it. We've got you covered, Jimmy. Hi there, we're Million Pugs. You've probably seen our logo on stream. Well, here's what we actually do. Million Pugs earns you skins and in-game rewards whenever you shop online. When you shop with any of our partnered brands, you earn our own loyalty points, called Pugs. You then swap those Pugs for some spiffy SMITE loot, including favor, gems, chests, boosters, and skins. Anyway, head on over to millionpugs.com now and sign up for free.
That's right. Thank you to Million Pugs. For those of you out there who haven't heard of them, I'm learning of them this weekend. With millionpugs.com, you can earn in-game loot for SMITE and your favorite games whenever you shop online. So if you sign up now for free at millionpugs.com, you can start earning pugs to spend on favorite gyms, or even Husky Handler Scotty. And of course, we also have our First Blood replays brought to you by Million Pugs. So we'll be able to look at some of the First Bloods that happened so far this tournament, the excitement that they have been able to bring, of course, adapting, helping lead the way for the Ravens a little bit earlier, despite taking a spill, still looking good in their First Bloods. You'll get to see the Bolts set as well up against Hex Mambo, and just a good rotation coming out of Baskin. And exactly what you would expect when you get a couple people coming over to the duo lane. You're going to get a kill on to BaRRaCCuDDa. So again, thanks to Million Pugs for the First Blood replays. As well as thank you to Unity Gaming Services, one of our sponsors here for the World Championship. If you've ever thought of building your own game, Unity Gaming Services offers it's a modular platform for game development that can help you bring your ideas to life. You can learn more at unity.com/UGS. And of course, one of the other sponsors that we have to thank here is Sweetwater. Thanks to Sweetwater for joining us here at the SMITE World Championship. If you need a little refresher, make sure that you hit up the Sweetwater booths, grab a drink before the next match kicks off. I know I can't wait, because when the desk is done, that is the first thing I think I'm going to be going and
we got so
up.
much work ahead of us.
Yeah, and I've got a little while to go. I'm not saying like right here, not this desk.
Okay.
I'm at the day. Come on, drink responsibly or something like that. Either way, we're going to be looking through the halftime show at the bracket that we've seen, what we've seen so far, what's yet to come, and maybe help visualize what some of the implications have been. 2-0s so far today for the SWC. The Kings able to win over the Ravens, the 2-0. A little misleading considering how close some of those games get. Same thing here for the Bolts and the Mambo.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that it just reflects as 2-0 on the bracket, right? It doesn't tell the full tale. If you guys are just now tuning in, please watch those games. I promise you, they are not as one-sided as a 2-0. Those were incredibly entertaining matches.
I mean, hell, the last one I was convinced was going to 3. I think everybody was until the last 2 minutes. All of a sudden, everything collapses. It means we got the Kings and the Bolts for our first semifinal tomorrow. That'll be kicking off. We still have a couple of matches today, though. Dragons taking on the Warriors right after this halftime show. I saw them getting up on the stage, getting ready actually right now. And then a little later today, Leviathans and Titans, a rematch from last year's Worlds Finals, and one that we've seen quite a few times this year. And Trelly, each time they've met up, the Titans have had a lot of trouble reversing that fate.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy matchup, right? I mean, the Leviathans play such a clean brand of SMITE. They never are going to give you anything in the early. They know how to play it to their strengths, to their drafts, that sort of thing. So I hope, and I'm thinking, that the Tartarus Titans were able to draft up a good, solid draft, things like that, different style of picks that you wouldn't expect, because as it stands, there's nothing you could predict about this bracket. I mean, it's so exciting, these matchups, and I expect to be continuously floored throughout the rest of this day.
I would already be out if we were looking at predictions and we were talking about it. I thought Mambo was going to have the better matchup already, so my bracket could be thrown out the window already. And just some fantastic things that are still going to be coming up. Of course, we've got the cosplay contest, I believe, tomorrow that's going to be happening between the two semifinals that I'm really excited for. But right now, we can look back, see what we've watched. Again, as Mifflin said, if you're just tuning in, and look at match number 2, Bolts taking on Mambo. And a lot of the story for this one, at least to me, Trelly, it feels like game 1 felt like Baskin and Vin. Game 2, it felt like Baskin and Las. No matter what, Baskin's the common theme here. We're kind of questioning him coming into this weekend and what we saw, especially over Phase 3. I don't think I can question it anymore.
No, Baskin definitely showed up massive for his team. You could tell they did their homework, though. I think the Chiron was a fantastic answer to the Mercury. If you're going to go blink beads, you're going to be taking a lot of damage. You don't get Aegis in that build. And I think Dzoni was trying to play that same brand of Smite that he just played during qualifiers. Didn't quite work out the same way. The Bolts were prepared for it. Second game, a little bit of adaptation. You know, Mambo showed that they knew how to adapt to that draft. However, what they couldn't account for was those clutch rotations in from Baskin. He was constantly behind Mambo when they were looking for aggression, and also, you know, using that Ragnarok to force out the beads early. It worked once, it worked twice. It wasn't going to work towards the end. Someone else had to force the beads, and unfortunately, Dzoni couldn't do it all by himself.
Yeah, there's only so much work you can do, right? And you need a little help, unfortunately, for them. As the game went on, and you'll see, you know, looking at the leads, looking at the gold in moments like this, the kills in moments like this, you're starting to think, all right, hit the pause button, we're going to game 3. All of a sudden, you get a couple of good turnarounds. Baskin diving relatively deep, good taunt coming out of LASBRA. And Mifflin, you've been on the player side of this, but you've seen the you've gotten to cast as many of these as well. Sometimes all it takes is one just really, really good play. And in late game, which 26 minutes you're starting to hit, you're absolutely in the position to be able to win.
I mean, I was of like mind with you, Gore. I was 17 minutes in, Hex Mambo is starting to spool up, the Chronos build is starting to come through, a bunch of team fights go their way. I'm thinking to myself, all right, finally a game 3 at this event. And then the Olympus Bolts flip it on their head. It's off the back that one fire giant dance that just really goes south.
Yeah.
Looked to me like Hex Mambo were not of like mind. They couldn't quite agree on exactly where they wanted to stand, what the fight was. Is it a fight? Is it an objective get out? And the Olympus Bolts punish them for it heavily. But still, an incredibly entertaining match, and one that I'll probably be watching back.
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of curious for both of your thoughts, mainly because coming into this, I think this was the set that people were most contended over as to who was going to win. I mean, Mifflin, you would even, I think, Hurry called it 50-50. You had said 70-30.
Okay, you gotta blow me up like that.
I'm going to absolutely blow you up like that. This is the perfect opportunity to do so. But being, I didn't hear anybody talking about Bolts making out of this one. That's the thing. When we were talking about semifinals, when there was any discussion, it was Kings, whoever they end up playing, and nobody was ever like truly certain about it. How do you feel like looking ahead that the Bolts did today? Is it enough to be able to topple Trelly, maybe people like the Kings?
Well, the thing is, I imagine the Bolts did a lot of homework for getting through Mambo, right? That was probably step 1.
Yep.
I don't imagine they did, you know, too much into the Kings. Now is probably where that's going to start, right? As of now, you made it through game number 1. That's usually the mindset of these players. Let's focus one match at a time.
Yeah.
Once you get through Mambo, okay, now the game plan starts. I'm sure they had some semblance of a composition if they were going to go against the Bolts, or go against the Kings, rather.
Yeah.
So, but now it's time. That's when they're going to be like, okay, guys, we got over our first hurdle. Now it's time to think about what are we going to do for Captain Twig? How are we going to stop genetics? Those sort of questions. You got to take it one game at a time. And a bracket this competitive, you just got to slow it down and really focus up.
Especially, I mean, talking about competitive, turn your eyes back towards match number 1, one that surprised me because you're coming into this and a lot of people were having the conversation. The Kings even straight up said it. They said out of the 4 teams that qualified from the group stages last week, Ravens were the ones that they're most likely to beat. Admittedly, they were right, but game number 1, a little bit of a gold lead early on. Eventually, the Kings turn it, start to dominate. Game 2, that lead lasts way longer for the Ravens. Still ends up being a 2-0 for the Kings, but it is a Mifflin, a lot closer of a call, I think, than they were prepared for.
Yeah, I'll answer the question you had asked of Trelly with just a bit of information here. Are the Olympus Bolts ready for the Camelot Kings? How is that going to start to look? I would say that the Camelot Kings are not playing their best brand of Smite right now. That was not exactly what I was expecting to see from them coming into an event like this. I had expected a dominant performance, something we'd heard rumblings from the players as well, just expecting this one to be an absolute blowout. It wasn't. It was anything but. It was a 2-0 in name only and in stats only, because those games were both pretty contested at various points. But what I will say is, as a player, the first set, always your most difficult at an event like this. So hard to play in front of the fans. When everyone's roaring in your ears, communication get jumbled, you get flustered a little bit. I mean, you can even hear it on the cast. Sometimes we're getting swept up, going a million words a minute just because the energy in this room is so electric.
Yeah.
Now that the Camelot Kings have seen one go in, now they've got their dub and they're advancing through the bracket. We're getting the best of 5s now for these teams. That's the Kings at their best. I'm expecting a pretty significant jump from them in this next set. I think we haven't even seen 70-60% of what the Kings have got.
Charlie, you feel the same way, that there's more to the Kings, that, well, not even than meets the eye, more just to expect for what we're going to see out of them this weekend?
Yeah, I would say they're just getting started. I mean, that's kind of what you got to do. You got to play every match like it's your last, but also you got to assume there's going to be some ramp-up time. You know, you want to build up some momentum. That's what Coach Biggie told us towards the reason he picked the Highland Ravens. He wanted to start off strong and continue building. And I think they've set up for a very tall mountain. If they're going all the way to the finals, they have that opportunity.
Well, it's been one of maybe the most exciting kind of starts. Granted, maybe it could have been a teensy bit more just if they had gone 3.
Just give me 1-3.
But they were still really, really competitive games. And so that is the halfway point. Of course, we can look at the schedule. And we are in the halftime show. For those of you who were watching earlier, you got some really, really amazing reveals during the keynote a little bit earlier today. Tomorrow, cosplay contest between the semifinals. Before the finals, though, you'll see there's a nice big block. There's the Build a God panel, which is great, the DKO Creator Cup, but also the 3rd annual Golden Bolts, which is a great time to bring this up. Not only is it our award show voted on by fans you've nominated, and we will announce the winners of that one. Going through all tons of categories. You've got Fan Artist of the Year, you've got Streamer of the Year, Video Creator of the Year, Pro Player of the Year, and more. There's at least 8 of them. And up for a couple of those are actually players from the next match, the Dragons and the Warriors. Believe Pagon, one of the nominees for Rookie of the Year, that is going to be playing. On the other side, I think Nika has an Esports Play of the Year up there on Robin or something like that. And so you've got these guys you should know at this point, right? They've been playing on and off all year long, working for this moment. The Warriors maybe having to work a little harder to get to this event. And Trelly, specifically after last week, definitely had a lot of legwork to do from the end of group stages to get to the point where they can take on the Dragons.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea, right? Same sort of play. You got to take it one match at a time. Sure, it didn't look clean, but the Oni Warriors made it, and that's what they were looking for. Now that they've made it, now they got to focus on their first opponent, and that's all they're laser focused on. They got to win match number 1. We've talked a lot about their emotions, right? They're feeling good right now, and they want to continue riding with that. And I think they're a team that can just ride the wave of the crowd. They start hearing, the Oni Warriors fans getting loud. They're going to use that in the game. And if they show up early against the Jade Dragons, they're a team that likes to play through the early. So if they stomp them off their mojo a little bit, could see some sparks flying.
I actually saw Dardes during game number 2 there. And you could tell that there was a little Mifflin, a little bit of nerves, right? Going into it, just you're going up against the Dragons. You've got a crowd. I've seen a lot of Dragons jerseys out there, so I'm certain that this one's going to be one of the loudest ones. And you have to think you're also going up against Pagon, who up to this point, again, you mentioned a nominee for Rookie of the Year, but realistically, the fact that he's a rookie blows me away with what he's been able to do this year. I mean, you're talking about someone who will play non-standard picks in mid. If he's playing the standard picks, he's still going to look better than most of you. Like, it's just insane what he has been able to do. And I think that mid lane matchup and that kind of the cooler heads that can appear there, pressure from the Dragons could easily overwhelm the Warriors.
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in the mid lane matchup, namely because we're about 6, maybe 7, 8 months out since Pagon rocking like Gilgamesh mids, since he's running it down with the Susano mids. Since then, has largely had to dial it in a little bit. I think it might be due, in fact, to having Sprack on his team, that Scream for the uninitiated. When he's rocking his wild picks, maybe Pagon's got to play a bit more in line with the standard. That
you
said,
say that, but they were doing Scream Atlas mid like 4 months ago.
Well, yeah, and then Pagon's just jungling. That's not a weird mid pick. That's just him roll swapping in the middle of a professional set.
Fair enough.
In a high stakes match. Look, the Jade Dragons, I think, a force to be reckoned with, to be sure, and the mid lane matchup, one that we have to keep our eyes on. Because even when we take into account unorthodox picks, it's not just Pagon.
No.
Dardes is in the exact same conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Could we see an Afro today? Maybe. Is it going to be a Morrigan with a Cthulhu composition? I don't know. Can it be on her mid? Maybe. I don't know. These are all questions that we have to figure out and watch as fans and as casters, and questions that the coaches for both of these teams also have to start prepping for. It can't be easy.
Well, and Trelly, it's actually interesting to take a note actually from the Bolts in their interview, thinking about the fact that we haven't seen the Dragons for a while. And, and in theory, sometimes you don't see these teams for a while. It can go either way, right? They're going to show up and you're going to be like, it's definitely been a while, huh, guys? We're shaking the rust off. But after hearing what the Bolts were saying, where you have to imagine that means the Dragons on the other side of the bracket have been scrimming not just the Bolts, but probably the Kings as well. That's some really good practice going into Worlds. I have to imagine that this might not even be the same Dragons that we saw at Phase 3 playoffs. They might be leveled up.
And I would argue that's scarier, right? I mean, you just not being able to see the Dragons for a while, you don't know what kind of strats they're cooking up. We talked about the weird style of picks, you know, Scream being able to take some different things into the jungle or even role swaps entirely. This would be the time to whip something crazy like that out, right? I mean, if they really want to make a name for themselves, jump to the semifinals, you're not prepared for Atlas jungle, you know, Atlas mid, those sort of things. It could surprise you. However, they do play normal picks, normal 5v5 brand of SMITE extremely well, and I imagine that's what the Oni Warriors prepared for. It's still scary, but it's easier to dial in on than you know, their different style of picks.
I'm excited for that one. Luckily, I get to be up there this time around. I get to cast that one, so I'm even more excited, I think, for that part of it, because I'm sure they're going to put on a good show. And then the last match of the day, if you're talking about good shows, you got to look there. A rematch of the World's Finals from Season 8, where the Leviathans were able to find a 3-0 Mifflin. I mean, and it had been years since we saw something like that in the finals, that much of a dominating performance, especially considering the team that the Titans had a lot of different faces now, right? You've got Stu, you've got Slaney, you've got Sino in the jungle. Definitely a lot of change-ups, and that jungle matchup is maybe the most important for them just because they've only had a month to work on it.
Yeah, I am really curious, man. I'll echo the sentiment that Trelly had at the top of the day. If Sino hasn't expanded the God Pool, that's dangerous. Having the nausea, that's a permaban. I don't imagine he gets that pick even once this set. So where do you fall back? Is it the Nemesis? Well, we've seen in the play-ins that teams are willing to ban that one out as well. Are you falling back to the Chalk? There's a reason teams aren't banning out that one, right? So I'll be keeping my eyes on this because his direct opponent, his direct opposition, Panatom on the other side, I've made no qualms sharing that I think that this is the best jungler in the world. Bar none. Stop. None. Qualifiers, none. No. He's just so good at establishing pressure. He's so good at facilitating the win conditions for his team. Panatom can farm up the entire map and run the map himself, or he can legitimately starve himself for food and water, can't catch a back camp to save his life because Shinto's gobbled it up like a farm goblin, and it just doesn't matter. He's still going to perform. He's still going to initiate these fights and be a difference maker. This is one where the Leviathans, I think, can just come out, play their own game, play standard, and they're still going to be the favorites. The Titans, if they want to win, they've got to step it up.
Oh, yeah.
And Trelly specifically, I mean, Leviathans, they came into this a second seed. The only team they couldn't choose from group stages was the Ravens, and that's because the Kings chose them. So they had the field, and they still ended up choosing the Titans because, I mean, time and time again, we've seen this rematch a few times, and this rematch every time is going the way of the Leviathans. And when you go back to the fact that, yes, the Kings were first seed coming into this, they won, but you look at the Phase 3 playoffs, they get second seed after pushing the Kings to 5 and making it a very, very dangerous territory, almost a reverse sweep. You have to imagine that this is definitely a room where the Titans are feeling more pressure than the Leviathans.
Yeah, I mean, this is a matchup that the Leviathans wanted because, number one, they prepared for it. Number two, they feel like they have the Titans number, right? They feel like they know how they play SMITE, how to stop that, and how to deal with the pressure they put out on the map. You're right to say the pressure's on the Titans. I mean, they have to try and make some adaptations, and we still have to bring up Sino. I mean, if you can get banned out in 2 bans, that's not a good sign. We know that he can play so many different things. I mean, this is the time where his E-set jungle could come out. You know, this is the time where his Scotty jungle come out. I would rather see those than Chalk at this point.
I thought Mifflin was going to leave the stage, by the way.
I mean, you're telling me you'd rather see Chalk at this point?
I think that, okay, between Scotty and E-set or Chalk.
E-set or Chalk?
E-set or Chalk? I'm still taking Chalk because Chalk, in my mind, at least has clear lines of execution. We can clown it all we want because the win rate's not crazy, but when he's rocking the Chalk jungle and running up to your back camps and SOTs there too, there's no answer for these Blink junglers. And it's not the same as like a Hunbots where you feel like, okay, I have to build beads. So often, they're probably coming in, these pro players with the same mentality we are on the desk. Let's Chalk jungle, what do we care? Get knocked up, get silenced, get slammed. I mean, that's just how it goes down. With E-set jungle, it's, man, sure hope he scales well so I can go slam a gold Fury.
Yeah, and then he slams it really hard.
Yeah.
We both agree at the very least. We don't want to see the Chalk.
Oh, I'm with you.
Okay, good. Yeah. That's all I care about.
It's just Mifflin also doesn't want to see the E-set. And you're the one who brought it up. I'm not
He's not gonna help you.
Wagon here.
I'm just saying I would rather see these.
Okay, over the Chalk is where
he's gonna lock an E-set.
I'd rather see.
So foolish.
You won't look foolish. It doesn't matter. Whatever. We've danced around the E-set enough. He's probably not going to pick it.
Well, you know what?
Maybe.
Maybe. We'll find out later when we get into match number 4. Of course, we're also talking about it. Match 4, potential 4th ring for Zapman. That's what he's got his eyes set on. Leviathans and Titans are going to be what closes out the day. But that's going to do it for the halftime show here right now. Match 3 is going to be coming up next after this quick break.